pregnant woman smashing the windows of a Jamaican bakery on East 169th Street in the Bronx. The owner says the beef was over Jamaican beef patties. The bakery had just run out, and they asked the woman to wait 15 minutes while they made more.
She was arguing, screaming, hello, hello. So finally another employee ran to the front, and they said to her, miss, may I help you? And she said, yeah, the other lady said there's no beef patties. Why?
What happens if you fundamentally disagree with something your kids are being taught at school? It's a question that some of the parents of pupils at this Birmingham school have been confronted with.
Mummy Lula hugged her, and now they're sick on both of them. Mummy Nini got some tissues and wiped them both.
Andrew Moffat is an award-winning deputy head teacher. Here he is with the Queen. He's been shortlisted for the World's Best Teacher Award for developing a diversity programme. The No Outsiders programme involves talking about relationships and highlighting the LGBT community. In other words, telling children, some much younger than 11, that it's okay to be gay.
From the national headquarters of RT America and our nation's capital, hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez. Because there is talk of U.S. military intervention in Venezuela, which President Trump says he is not ruling out, and because there seems to be a run-up to a war with Iran, and because we're now engaged in some way militarily in 76 countries around the world. Think about that. If you're shaking your head and as you hear that number, you probably should be. In 76 countries around the world, we have some type of military presence or some type of engagement. In fact, here, I'm going to show it to you so you can see it for yourself. It's even more dramatic when you actually look at it on a map.
Just a few months ago, Michelle Miller traveled to Wallace, Louisiana, and found a surprising history, not just about a plantation, but her own family. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning. Well, about an hour's drive from New Orleans along the Mississippi River sits the Civil War-era sugarcane plantation. The Whitney Plantation looms as a stark reminder that our nation was built on the backs of slaves. It's a tough part of our history to remember, but one man is investing a fortune to bring it all back to life.
The people of Marksville threw a celebration to mark the visit of 5 descendants of 12 years a slave author Solomon Northup. Northup descendant Evelyn Jackson was thrilled by the warm reception.
If Solomon could look down and see now, there is no hatred. I got so many people hugging me, you see that, hugging me and congratulating me. I'm in awe.
To keep these on so they wouldn't run away. And you can feel the weight of these chains. They heavy.
We are in the city of Mobile, Alabama, within the community of Africatown. Well, this is the last place where the shipment of slaves came to this country. There's not another place. It's right here.
Became a British colony in 1655, didn't it? It was taken from the Spanish, who'd already established a small trade in African slaves. And we do have some data from 1611 which shows that there were 558 African slaves and around 1,300 Spaniards at that time. But within 50 years of colonisation, their colonisation, Britain had established sugar estates and they were importing more slaves from West Africa, so the number had gone up to 45,000. And then by the time Britain abolished slavery in 1834, Jamaica had a population of more than 311,000 slaves compared to 16,700 Europeans. So is it possible to work out the extent to which Jamaica economically benefited from the free slave workers?
Reparations would you want?
Reparations actually begin with an acknowledgement of the historical injustices by way of chattel, colonial and neo-colonial enslavement. And therefore, one of the things that we are calling for is an all-party parliamentary commission of inquiry for truth and reparatory justice to explore the impact of this history on our present.
My visit is to look to the future. I think, frankly, while Britain and the Caribbean and Jamaica have had a very strong relationship, we've underplayed it.
Do you think that Britain and the Cameron and the taxpayers should pay reparations to countries like Jamaica for what happened during the slave trade?
Absolutely not.
The Broken Chains Festival in Amsterdam commemorates the day slaves were set free 154 years ago. 45,000 were set free in the former Dutch colony Suriname. Many descendants of slaves from the South American country now live in the Netherlands. Details of their history have long been hidden away in an archive in Suriname's capital, Paramaribo. Now, these handwritten 19th century books, containing the personal data of 80,000 enslaved people in the former Dutch colony, are about to be published online. Anke de Vogel has been searching for her roots in archives.
The more that is uncovered, the more horrific Brazil's slave trading past is revealed to have been. About 2 million slaves landed at this wharf, now an archaeological site, between the 1760s and the 1830s. A few blocks away, Mercedes Guimarães was renovating her house in 1996 when she found bones, thousands of human bones. It turned out to be a mass grave containing the burnt bodies of thousands of slaves, those who had died after the long and arduous journey from Africa.
32 islands and keys.
The perfect getaway. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is marketed as a Caribbean holiday destination, an escape from the rest of the world. But in fact, there are more than a dozen nations in this region which will never escape from their dark past.
Native genocide and slavery in the Caribbean have awful consequences.
The Atlantic slave trade involved the deportation of an estimated 30 million black men, women and children from Africa. From the 16th to the 19th century, they were sold to European slave traders who transported them to North and South America.
Welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. Hello, and this is Mr. Blows Your Minds, your host. And this channel is to report, articulate, transmit, communicate, articulate, unveil, decode, spread the news, whether it's by news, video, websites, or quotes from publications. As I articulate these information, I ask that the creator of the universe be here, heart, mind, soul, and spirit. Because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created the so-called greatest land, what they call the United States, as a descendant of that, I give honor to my ancestors. You know what my motto is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. Ho-ho! Man. You know, I didn't get a show yesterday due to the simple fact I was getting it in, trying to do some stuff, get this show here, preparation for today. And I must say, this show here, you know how we say this right here, this one right here, right? Because I know, before I even get into that, first and foremost, I want to say what's good to the subscribers, those who have new to the show, those who are old, those who are lukewarm. Welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. What's good, fam? Passerbyers. It's always a grand opening over here on this show. You know why? Because we're the hardest working show and we are the most hated. So when you're passing by, go down the aisles like you're going into your local grocery store, local store, shop, see what you like, hit that like button. You see something you don't like, hit the dislike button, or comment and say something. We'll send a supervisor or a manager out. Maybe we could work something out, give you a discount, give you an IOU. Maybe on your next term of time, we might get a like from you. But welcome to the show. Agents, do what you must do, because the beat goes on. It is what it is. Let's get it. So, you know, I think a lot of people was a lot upset with that last video I did, right? And some of you was concerned about old Mr. Blows Your Mind, but it's all good. And those who gave adulations and congratulations and giving me praise, I thank you as well. So, you know, a lot of people might be offended because Mr. Blows Your Mind seems to be trying to divide and conquer. That would be the furthest thing from the truth. I'm just setting the precedents as to who gets what. We all fam in this game. We all suffer through this game. But that don't mean that, again, according to this game, how it's been played and been laid upon us, that, you know, you have to get in where you fit in at. You can't just make up things to make it just a part because you want to make it. As a whole, we all got this. We all got this on lock. But again, I have to do this particular show for a particular reason. Because there's a lot of people, again, I know you were probably upset and threw the big middle finger at me and called me all kinds of everything up under the sun. But again, I'm not here to hurt nobody. Believe it or not, you my fam. I just need to make the distinction, not because to separate you from it, but I have to bring a reality to you. Because again, let me tell you like this. Because see, there's a lot of people out here, because you know the ADS, DOS, BADOS is having a ripple effect in the social media world. You can go in a lot of places and you're seeing a lot of things being stated, and there's people who are propagating their nation as to being supportive, as being the cog in the wheel that made everything fruition for us here, and that is not the truth. We all are part of the same game. In some aspects, we all might be connected family-wise, being here and there. But again, where you end up being, as the modern time rolled on, is the claim in the place that you, again, is where you derive from. Now, I see a lot of people who saying a lot of things. A lot of people, again, because it's ruffling business, right? You got those people who might be part of a pro-African, well, it's pro-African. There's nothing wrong with being pro-African. It can be pan-African and things of that nature. They seem to think that people who are advocating DOS are trying to make a distinction or causing a ripple effect. It's not the truth. That is not what it is. It is just making a claim that those who are cut from this cloth have a legitimate claim to present to a nation and said, we, these, descendant of the directness of that, are asking for this, right? And so there's so many opinions and so many different ways that people out here talking that, again, it's a hot topic. And so I felt that it would take it upon myself that, again, I'm going to lay out something so that everybody gets a chance to see from the perspective. Now, if you shouldn't see yourself, don't mean that I didn't think of you. How long could a video be if I did it? It would be different if it would be live, right? But since they got me on the 90 days, and might as well got to go into that right quick, right? So I guess I'm going to have to wait out the 90 days for unspecified reason for why. Again, only thing they want to say is the fact that you had a copyright. But according to the copyright, they said it was a takedown. It wasn't really being stigmatized and putting a strike on my channel. Was you got allotted time to take this down, and if you do it within the allotted time, you will not be penalized. You will not be striked, right? And then again, according, like I said, but 5-10 seconds of a video was worthy to take me all the way down, means that was not the real reason. I mean, you seeked out somebody to do what you do. It's most likely it's because of the Covington High School, isn't it, right? I think that's probably what it is, right? Because I laid out all that truth, you penalized me because, again, y'all went out after so many people. But the problem was I laid out everything that even though you spent certain things you couldn't spend because it was in its entirety. So it was up to the viewer to whether they seen what they seen and heard what they heard. So you're penalizing me for that. Ain't that something? Wow. Anyway, moving on with that. So let me get into this show because, again, there's a lot here to be given. Now, man, boy, see, get it going, y'all. We got to get it going because you know what? Like I said, it's a hot topic right now, man. A lot of people is upset. A lot of people believe that, you know what I'm saying, that people trying to distinguish themselves. Some people saying that the ADOS is acting like white people. They love white people. They trying to suck up to them. Let me tell you something. Ain't no ADS, DOS, BADOS. That ain't even what this is about. And to have the nerve to curve your mouth, to even perch, what they say, perch your mouth like that. What's wrong with you? Huh? After all we've been through, you don't know the difference between somebody who is selling versus somebody who is, again, proud to be and giving adulations and praise due worthy to those who nobody seems to have remembered, because again, it's that book. I know a lot of people, we don't get into that, right? But we can always take something from that book, and it says, honor thy mother and father so that your days may be long. Don't it say that? Honor your mother and father so your days will be long. Well, is them our mothers and our fathers? Were they not the first ones that brought you to put you on the sword to give you this, what it is that everybody else has seen to be ruffling and tied and want a part of it? And so you say, because we say that, putting slave in our name and all this, that somehow we're dysfunctional. No, I have to question certain people when they start talking like that. I've got to see your pedigree. Who are you really? Because anybody who questions anything that you see, anything that give commemoration, honor, to be recollect, to bring back, to resurrect, I have to question, who are you really? Huh? Who are you really? Acting as if like playing semantics with words and all this stuff and I have to, when I hear that, my sense of me being on this planet knows there's something in you that ain't quite there. There's something, cause see, there's a something in you that ain't right. So anyway, I just gonna lay down the case. So let me start off with this first, right? Let me go on here, right? Because, see, it's a hot topic because so many people have been affected by it. It is global. Yes, there's some distinction because, again, geographical locations of places of destinations of where people been don't mean because we always on the same damn boat. Means that everybody is equal. Then some people say, well, those people, then they got separated and they take it. Okay, that might be, but you'll never, it's kind of like you taking the damn 23andMe and all that. They gonna tell you a geographical location, but they can't tell you the damn family. Do I need to say that again? A lot of you done sat there and got the 23andMe and myancestry.com, gave it a blood spit in the tube and came back and gave you some percentage and a geographical location, but can't tell you the family you're tied to. And you running with that. So the same thing would be your story, talking about, well, people got dispersed and this one might have been the father was here and the mother went here and then the child went there. Okay, that might have been, but where are we in right now? Tracing you right to this day, not you just getting here, a generation, 2 generations. We're talking about when you got 10, 12, 14 generations, 16 generations here. Huh? When you got that compared to somebody else, it's not saying that you don't got a claim. Huh? Let me put you like this. Let's say a company was going out of business. Let's say a franchise. Let's pick. Let's say motherfucking Hyatt Hotel or some shit like that. Let's say the Hyatt Hotel, and let's say that the Hyatt Hotel again. Well, let's fucking say the Trump Hotel. I think I went to Russia and shit, right? So they got Trump hotels every motherfucking where, right? Let's just say the one that's in New York, right, is going to go bankrupt and belly up, and they're going to close the door. Now, based on all that being said, they tell those who work at the Trump in New York City that all the employees there will get a compensation package, car, house for your service. Now, let's say everybody else works at Trump hotels, but you work in Maryland. You might work in China. This one in Russia. This one over here in South America. This one, okay? Now, do everybody get to come to the one and get to claim the one in New York? Or only the people that is the ones who worked as employees in New York get the claim? Do I need to say that again? Trump Towers are all located in all different places in the world. We just going to say hypothetically, but he would love to do that, right? So again, those in New York, they're going to close the building, compensate them out with a severance package. House, car, money allotted, and they're going to say, okay, we're going to start our way. Now, you also work for Trump hotels. You're part of the franchise. Do you get the compensation, car, house, because the ones in New York are getting it? Ask yourself honestly. And if you come with the right conclusion, then this is what DOS is all about. See, it's not saying that you're not part of the family. Just we have a specific claim because we from a specific location coming out of a specific franchise that has to pay us. And that's all we're saying. Why is everybody trying to... Again, I hear some people saying, DOS is jealous because somebody got education. Well, what good is getting education if you... Man, get out of here with that. Anyway, let me move on. I'm going to get to that. We're going to get to that. But anyway, so let me start the show off again. You know, I got to start off slow, but I'm coming out the gate, right? Coming right the motherfucking gate, right? All right, so I'm going to come out the damn gate. And again, patience, right? It's about patience, right? Knowing when it's your turn, right? You don't just jump out the motherfucking window just because, you know what I'm saying, you don't want to wait. You want it instantaneous because you want it. Well, I seen a story right here, and let me show you this, and let's see. I'll make some analogies to this. Let's see how I get down and be right back. Check this out. Let's see how we're going to get it. Let's see if we're going to get this popping straight off the pack. It's going to be slow. We're going to get it going. Let's see. Come on. Where you at? Come on. Come on with it. There you go. Come on. Bring it in. You're slow. Come on. What's going on with y'all? Well, y'all just slowing up everything. Let's get it. Let's go.
The video shows an irate, bat-wielding pregnant woman smashing the windows of a Jamaican bakery on East 169th Street in the Bronx. The owner says the beef was over Jamaican beef patties. The bakery had just run out, and they asked the woman to wait 15 minutes while they made more.
She was arguing, screaming, hello, hello. So finally another employee ran to the front, and they said to her, Miss, may I help you? And she said, yeah, the other lady said there's no beef patties. Why the hell is there no beef patties? Excuse my language. She started cursing with, obscene words.
The owner, Simone Johnson, didn't want to be on camera, but says the woman, while she doesn't know her name, is a regular customer. This all happened on January 15th at Back Home Jamaican Bakery. Johnson says the woman eventually stormed out with another item, which she paid for, but returned 5 minutes later, bat in hand.
They heard a loud noise. We thought it was gunshots or something like that, and we got scared. They ran in the front. There was glass shattered everywhere, and we've never seen anything like this, never.
The owner says it cost $2,000 and a half day of work to repair the windows. You can see the woman arguing with employees on camera in the front of the store, and then she returns, shattering the windows. That woman is described as thin, with long black braided hair. She was last seen wearing a black and white fur-hooded winter jacket, black leggings, black and white sneakers, and carrying a multicolored aluminum baseball bat.
It's not nice. I don't know what to say. People need to get it together.
So you can see those store windows have since been replaced. The store owner tells me she believes that woman to be at least 7 or 8 months pregnant. Anyone with information is asked to call Crime Stoppers tonight in the South Bronx. I'm Diana Rocco, Pix 11 News.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Diana.
All right. So we see a sister there of the family, right? A sister of the family, right? And so she went into a restaurant, had a little taste. Again, she's pregnant, right? So, again, those who, as a man and having your partner, your significant other, lady or woman, wife, being pregnant, and, during those times, you go eat. You know what I'm saying? Craving, boy. You know what I'm saying? You be eating a lot of stuff that you be like, man, come on, we're going to get some White Castle. We're going to get some pizza. We're going to get some rib tips. I know you niggas don't eat no pig. But anyway, get some rib tips, all that good shit, right? You be eating all kind of stuff, right? When the baby craving and wants something, guess what? Mama going to go eat. And so daddy there, you know, we gonna eat. So they're gonna do it. Okay, so then again, she had taste for some beef patty. Now again, you know, I remember when them beef patty came out, I had a couple stores around in my neighborhood back in the day. Lines used to be long when that store first came there. They were good. They good when they hot, you know what I'm saying? You know, got the nice flaky crust and I got, you know, they good, right? Now, impatientness, right? You know, again, see, some people, again, want it add water ding ready, or because I come in, it should be already ready. Again, it's a place of business, right? That means they, you know, place of business, they got things going. Maybe somebody got a big order, you know what I'm saying? Somebody's slow, maybe somebody was late for work and all that other stuff. They got to sometimes put that into consideration. But again, some people impatient. You never know. Maybe, you know, she would just happen to be through there, coming through there. Maybe she had stopped somewhere. Someone was like, well, since I'm around the way, let me get one. You know, you know, sometimes you just got the urge and the taste, right? And you wanted it. And so again, based on they couldn't supply her fast enough, she decided to say, you know what I'm saying? She seen the episode in Barbershop. Huh? Who out there busting that car out the window? Ooh, that sounds like a nice car. Come to find out, it's your shit being tore up, right? And so, sister went somewhere. She had to live around the way, right? Or she went to her car and got her aluminum bat. And went to town. See, my man said, man, it cost me $2,000 and a half day's work. And if they ever catch up to her, she's going to probably have that baby up in the county. Unless they don't want to press charges, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully she come out and work that out. But again, the impatientness. Again, some things, you know what I'm saying, it's just not going to be the way you want it, and you have to be a little patient. And it seems today people don't have that. Again, it's kind of like saying, you know, the situation. Now, again, my analogy would be like, okay, you got DOS trying to do what it's trying to do. Other people, again, you don't have the patience, right? Because again, I think that if DOS get it, then everybody who got a claim it to be helping you. But if you're trying to, you know, butt the line, right, or trying to cheat and all that other stuff, then you're going to mess it up for everybody. And again, it ain't about dividing. It's just about it is what it is, right? And so here's a lesson to be learned for those who are impatient. You know what I'm saying? Whatever the cost for the bean patty or the beef patty, it ain't gonna be worth it. That's $2,000. You know what I'm saying? Possibly getting some writing on your record, and maybe end up doing some time community service. Baby might be born coming up out of the, you know what I'm saying? Baby gonna be born up in the cell. Possibly all that can happen, all but due to the simple fact of your impatientness. Patience is a virtue, they say. So you need to have some and show some constraint at times, because again, it can be costly at the end, right? So, all right, so we're going to get into this here because, you know, let's see. Do I want to, let's see. Well, let's see. All right, let's see. I think I got, let me see if these might be right. See, you know, the thing is, man, because I'm trying to get these shows off because I'm behind, you know. And sometimes, you know, it's just, you know, it's just sometimes. So let's see if how this going to come out. All right. Maybe this, let's see. Is this what I think it is? Hold on one second, y'all. Let me check and see. Okay, maybe this don't need this on there. Maybe this is by itself. So, okay, let me see. So, all right, so let's see. You see the impatientness there. Now, this particular story here has something to do with the simple fact that, again, you know, again, we are different peoples. And when I talk about that, I mean the family, us versus other peoples, right? Right? Other peoples. And so other peoples have their own ideologies of things, perspective, view of life, and the way they think the natural order of things go. And because they have been in the position of colonizers and imperialism and colonialism, they feel like, well, we know it's kind of like the old show, Father Knows Best, right? Because again, the way if you think about it, minorities is really legally or lawfully, it's like a child, right? So father and the parents, right? Major versus minor. Major is parents, minorities being child. They feel like, well, since we are your parents, we're going to, we're going to know what's best for you, right? And so you may look at it and be like, what are you talking about? That there is some monkey business. But they say, no, you need to know this and you need to instill this because this is the way that we are turning the direction of society and the world. But you might get a problem with it. Well, check this out here, and then we'll come back, and then I'll give you a better, after you see it, then you'll probably understand better and more where I'm coming from. So, seeing this here, and again, I think it's kind of been out there, but check it out anyway. Let's get it. Let's get it. Come on. Why are you so slow today, huh? Why are you so slow? I mean, man, boy, they really be... They be making, I don't get it. I really don't.
If you fundamentally disagree with something your kids are being taught at school, it's a question that some of the parents of pupils at this Birmingham school have been confronted with.
Mummy Lula hugged her, and now they're sick on both of them. Mummy Nini got some tissues and wiped them both.
Andrew Moffat is an award-winning deputy head teacher. Here he is with the Queen. He's been shortlisted for the World's Best Teacher Award for developing a diversity programme. The No Outsiders programme involves talking about relationships and highlighting the LGBT community. In other words, telling children, some much younger than 11, that it's okay to be gay. It's something that's angered some of the parents whose kids are at the school.
It's not for the appropriate for the reception kids.
It's about promoting homosexuality. They should learn about it at an older age, not right now, because they can easily get influenced.
They teach kids to stay with boys and boys, and that's not a good thing.
It's opposite to our religion. We don't like it.
The Equality Act obviously clearly says you can't discriminate against religion and whatnot, and that's what they're doing. It's 99% Muslim. It's not about being Muslim. The Jewish community, the other communities, the Christian communities, they all have issues around the way things are being done.
Some 400 parents have signed a petition calling on the school to stop the No Outsiders programme. And earlier this week, the row between school and parents escalated to this.
We are not sure whether they fully understood the implications of this programme. So, be very clear, parents, that these are your rights under the Equalities Act. Your children's belief is protected.
This area of Birmingham is predominantly Muslim, and being gay is forbidden in Islam. The school's reading programme uses books about LGBT issues. This one is a story about a family with two mums. Another, a fairy tale about a prince falling in love with another prince. The parents may not like it, but the government's own watchdog has classified this school outstanding. That's the top mark a school can get. And much of the praise is for the way the children here are taught about the UK's equality laws, which could be why the school says it will not bow to parents' pressure. Deputy Head Andrew Moffat, who's openly gay himself, had to resign from a previous job after a similar row with Christian parents at his former school. Despite the controversy, the teacher says his diversity programme is not going away.
We have to ensure we safeguard and protect them from all possible forms of harm, including homophobic or transgender bullying. We have no plans to change their curriculum, and No Outsiders remains an integral part of the drive for excellence.
In light of this, some parents have chosen to remove their kids from the school and opted to pay for private tuition. This is a row about a small school, but it's exposed a big clash between a religious community and the diversity that's part and parcel of modern-day Britain.
All right, so we see that you see in the UK, they have a so-called diversity course that they're teaching children under the age of 11. You know, I mean, you know, in this day and age, I would assume that due to the accessibility of having technology in your hand and, you know, phones and tablets and things of that, if you're not monitoring children, that there's a possibility they can, like, you know, hit some place of the dark corners of the internet and see some things they're probably not supposed to be seeing, right? So they learn, again, you know how it is, you're outside and you have friends, and again, according to a lot of stuff is if you come from a family that has older brothers and siblings, and you learn from them. Now, they, again, back in the old school way, it was oochie coochie, right? Remember the oochie coochie, right? Doing the oochie coochie, or pants to pants, or, you know, all that. So they learn, you small, you see all that, you learn that from somebody, right? And that's how you was getting your implementation into learning about sex, right? So other than that, you're innocent. You don't, your mind ain't on sex. Again, you even get to the point of that you even like the girl. You didn't even know, you know, passing a note and all that. Oh, I like you, you know, and do you like me? Yes, sir. Check the box, yes or no. Yeah, all that old stuff, right? And so, but again, to have the curriculum in school as part of like history, reading, English, math, you understand? Does it have its place? Yeah, but again, at the appropriate age, it's kind of like, well, you know, there's certain like music that, again, when the CDs came out, about having labels about, you know, specific lyrics, and then going to the store and buying beer and cigarettes is a certain age. But how is it that you can learn? You have to be a certain age for all that. But when it comes to learning about diversity, about LGBTQT, right? They want to inculcate it as young as possible because, again, the minds are impressionable. Very, again, as somebody said, you know, you really are. Again, they got soft clay, you know, like soft clay. You remember back in the day, you used to play with clay and you can mold it as long as it's soft. When it get hard, it's fixed. So I guess they said the earliest that they can get it would be better for those people who fall under the umbrella of the LGBTQ or all that, right? Now, again, what we're finding out is, see, here there's parents who feel like they had the right to say, well, I don't agree with your curriculum, and that they want to remove their children. But then it was that the queen and them was like, no, they're going to eat cake. No, we're going to give it to them anyway. So, again, you're going to find out as time go on how this will be implemented, because, again, you know what my motto is: if you see it in one place, you're going to see it in other places. Remember the story, for those who are avid watchers of the show, remember I did the story about they was teaching that in the same place, UK, and they was teaching them that the girl was a boy and the boy was a girl, or matter of fact, having the boy say he can wear tampons. You remember that? All right, so we see that, again, you seen that when they did show the little story, again, to see the diversity is, you didn't have in the book. Did you see in the book? Did you see the picture in the book? It was a black woman with the black boy and the little white boys on the side, and it was teaching him that, what was this, what is it, Teddy got two mommies, introducing Teddy, about king and king. Really? Really? I mean, is it that rampant? That is it statistically that bad out here that people are just going out there and doing all this travesty to people under the LGBTQ umbrella? If it do, it sure ain't hitting the damn news like that. And guess what? That's what Black Minds TV do. I search for news all the time. So if it is a stealthy move or stealthy atrocity that is not being reported, right? So again, I'm going to say, as I did once before, again, the first video that I did, Gay versus the Church, that they banned the number one, right? I do something and they going to go ban it. Why? Because I'm going to tell the truth. Gay folks, LGBTQ, your issue is not with the lumpen proletariat people. Your problem is with the church. You got to get the church to say that gay is not what God say. So again, y'all want to force everything on the populace, but again, the institution that where the people got the ideology from, it's not what you're going to attack, because it has its own issues with it, its damn self. And that's why you got Pope Francis in there trying to he-ho motherfuckers up out of there, because it's just wild and the fuck up in there, right? Well, anyway, we're going to move on, but just wanted to bring it to your attention, right? It's coming to a school near you. Unless you got the money to do what some of them did, right? Because they said religious preference, they like tossing that out the window. So what are they really saying? Think about that. If you're not going to give honor to the book that you said that God and his son is in, then are you saying that they ain't real? I don't know. You right down there what y'all think, right? You go ahead and tell me what you think, right? So let me get it going again. Let me give a PSA. You know, I'm doing it early, y'all, because y'all gonna get a lot today, man. I'm gonna pump it today because of this topic, just because of this damn topic. You understand? So let me go ahead and let me give this PSA. Then I got this behind it. All right, let's see if I got two behind it? Maybe I got two behind it. That's it. Where the other one at? Should be another one. Hold on. Where's that at? Where's that at? That should be one. I don't know if it's two. Let's see. I may have to stop that second one if it may not be. But I think I should be okay. That should be okay. All right, so let me go ahead. Let's do that first. Get the PSA out the way. All right. That's the public service announcement. Right? For those who might be here, again, I'm a man on the corner with a cup. Let me hold something. DNA from more than 26 million people is now in the hands of 4 companies. You know I'm going to say that again. DNA from more than 26 million people is now in the hands of 4 companies. This story was done February the 12th, 2019, coming from the Daily News. And this is how it reads. 4 companies now have DNA information on more than 26 million people. That's roughly the combined population of New York State, nearly 20 million, Connecticut, 3.5 million, and Chicago, 2.7 million. According to MIT Technology Review, the number of people who submitted their most personal genetic details to companies including 23andMe and ancestry.com doubled in 2018. At that rate, 100 million people will have provided information about their DNA makeup to private companies by the end of 2020. Testing kits like Ancestry DNA can be purchased on Amazon.com for $69 and are simple to use. Customers simply rub a cotton swab inside their mouth, seal it in a package, included it in the kit, mail it to a lab, and wait up to a month to find their ethnic makeup. While many people enjoy learning about their heritage, critics argue such that DNA information might allow insurance companies to discriminate against people predisposed to certain ailments. Insurance industry's executive Catherine Therox told NPR last year that those seeking coverage generally must disclose any genetic testings they're undergone, even if it was through a recreational ancestry testing company. DNA testing kits could also be used to implicate suspects in crimes. In 2018, alleged Golden State killer Jesse James D'Angelo was arrested in connection to up to a dozen murders that occurred in the 1970s and 80s. Prosecutors claimed a relative online genealogical data led them to D'Angelo. Companies that sell recreational DNA kits typically promise privacy to their customers, and both 23andMe and Ancestry.com have said they only work with law enforcement if instructed to do so by the court. 23andMe, which is based in California, and Ancestry.com, which operates out of Utah, dominates the DNA testing commercial markets. MyHeritage and Gene by Gene are also competitive in the genetic industry. University of California professor Elizabeth Jaw tweeted last week that DNA testing kits should be approached with caution. First rule of data: once you hand it over, you lose control of it. You have no idea how the terms of service will change for your recreational DNA sample, she wrote. All right, so again, 26 million people have given up their DNA that has been now harvested by 4 companies in the world, got all those. Oh my God, man. It ain't even really funny, right? It's not really funny. It's really not funny. Because again, think about the 26 million people who given up their DNA sample. For those who might be hearing me, you might be part of that. That database that they're building, that monster that they're building, right? The beast, I think they call it in Utah, right? Building that beast up by having all the genetics, and when they be able to, again, like I said, they was able to catch somebody who did a crime through family. So somebody DNA matches, they can, investigate you to try to get the match to figure out who the individual, because you have a similar match in your DNA to somebody we seeking, right? So again, they said for recreational. Now again, I've been hearing that lately about these DNA test kits and doing this 23andMe and stuff. That this stuff is just recreational, right? It's kind of like what they call it, a lie detector test, right? Inadmissible in court, right? So it's kind of like for fun, right? We're going to tell you your so-called ethnic makeup. Again, as I said earlier in the beginning of the show, it's kind of like taking a DNA test, and again, they're going to tell you that you from, again, are they going to go outside of the story that they told you about history, that you're going to come from West Africa, right? And we knew based on the simple fact that when you gave us your name, you don't think that somehow your name, and they got somebody who does something, again, going into the database, and they can, certain things may come up, right? Is it all just to spit and swab and be able to kind of read your genetics when you have to go get? I mean, there's a lot of people that have been on this planet that I'm pretty sure you don't got no samples for. But again, they say science, and everybody fall in line. It's science. It's the truth. To know. That's what science is, to know, right? Don't mean that it's factual, because it's ever changing, because you never get exactly to the truth. That's why it's ever changing, right? So again, was it kind of a catch-22 or catch-44? One aspect, you're doing it for a way that you're thinking that you're going to be able to give, because again, based on the history that most of us is part of, we're all mixed up, right? we was come from one place and brought to another place, and then we done went into multiculturalism, and we done mixed up all this, and the family stories are due to what done transpired in history, done lost a lot of stuff, so we don't have the full story, so we need to go to science to tell us who the hell we are. But it never tell you who you are, it tell you where you might be from. But if you go back and try to say family, they look at the, who the hell are you? Ain't nobody, who your mom, who your daddy? Huh? Who your granddaddy? You know, I don't got no name, I just know I'm in your family. Like a stepchild like Cinderella, waiting for 12 o'clock. That's about all you're going to happen, right? I know, we everybody love everybody. But anyway, so we see that these 4 companies are tied into the insurance company. Oh my goodness, man. Think about that. They're going to have the data information, and then they're going to ask you, have you ever taken one of them DNA 23andMe tests? And you going to try to lie and say no. They're going to have it in the database. Hopefully you like Mr. Blow Your Mind. They ain't looked that shit. But if you did, guess what? They're going to breed conditions. They're going to be stopping people from getting insurance, preconditions, because they're going to already have the data that's going to tell you, shit, the next 10 to 15 years, this one going to have this. In 10 years, it's going to have that. In 5 years, it's going to have that. See, they're going to have the information, so they're going to be denying you. No more insurance, no more of that Alex Trebek coming on. $9.99. $9.99. You read it? You have a precondition? $9.99. What about me? I'm 70. $9.99. I have cancer. Whatever that $9.99. Ain't going to be no more of that shit. Ain't going to be no more of that shit. Preconditions due to the simple fact that they got your genes, your genetics. You never thought about that when you gave. You gave Dr. Frankenstein your DNA. You don't tell you the motherfucker made all kind of use somewhere. Anyway, let's move on. I ain't gonna get into all that. But you understand that's the story, letting you know that 4 companies out here is harvesting the DNA. 26 million. That's even bigger than that, because that connects to everybody in your damn family. So it's even bigger than that, and it's growing every day. And they lowering the price. It's $69 now. Get it. Get it. Everybody, who the part of Africa I'm from? Ain't telling you the family. Give you a location, and you cool with that. That's what it floats your boat. It floats your boat. I think you need a little bit more than that, but who am I? Don't pay no attention to me. I'm just Mr. Blows Your Mind on Black Minds TV. Just bringing you the news. That's it. I'm doing, bringing you some information for you to, some fat to chew on, right? That's all I'm doing. Moving on. Well, my next story, I got another read for you. So let me go ahead and let me go on and play that too. And let's be right back and let it go and do what it do. Check it out and check it out. Let's get it. Brotherly love. Randy Neanderthals were wiped out because they couldn't stop romping with their sisters. You know I'm going to say that again. Brotherly love. Randy Neanderthals were wiped out because they couldn't stop romping with their sisters. This story was done in The Sun. February 12, 2019, the creatures died out around 40,000 years ago. And this is how it reads. Neanderthals couldn't stop romping with their family members, and it may have spelled their demise 40,000 years ago. Rampant inbreeding left many of the ancient human-like creatures with physical deformities, a study found. It intensified as their numbers dwindled across Europe before they eventually died out just a few thousand years after humans traveled to the continent from Africa. Scientists analyzed the ancient bones of 13 Neanderthals who died 49,000 years ago in a cave in northern Spain. 7 adults, including 4 women and 3 men, were analyzed, as well as 3 adolescents and 3 children. They shared many of the same 17 birth defects, which were mainly focused around the nose, jaw, ribs, feet, and ribs or wrist. It is unlikely that the rare defects, which include spinal problems and warped teeth, were passed down without some level of inbreeding. Particularly towards the end of their reign, Neanderthals lived in small and isolated groups. The beasts would have been forced to inbreed, as their dwindling numbers left them with little other options to survive. But only romping with their own tribes damaged the species' genetic health, leading to deadly deformities and genetic diseases. This may have helped bring our close ancestors down after 600,000 years on Earth, though the extinction was probably not caused by a single factor, said team member Antonio Rosas. It was likely produced by a combination of ecological and demographic factors, which include interactions with modern humans. The study, published in the journal Scientific Reports, was carried out by scientists at the Spanish National Museum of Natural Sciences, the Institute of Evolutionary Biology in Barcelona, and the University of Oviedo. It wasn't just the Neanderthals that were randy. A study in November found that early humans had rampant sex with Neanderthals and other primitive cousins in a world of debauchery. Often depicted as brutish or sluggish, the human-like creatures actually had brains that were just as big as early humans. Scientists made a bombshell discovery of a 50,000-year-old Neanderthal teenager found buried along her mum and subspecies dad in November. All right, so we got a story there for you. Talking about brotherly love. You know how they talk about Philadelphia, right? They say they call Philadelphia the brotherly city of brotherly love. But you know that Philadelphia is really talking about Philadelphia, Ptolemy Philadelphia, of Philadelphius, right? And you know the history and the story to that is that he used him and his sister was together. They was romping with each other, right? And that's where you get the city of Philadelphia is coming from. Philadelphia, who was sleeping with his sister, and the brotherly love that you talking about ain't talking about brother to brother, talking about brother to sister. Did you know that? Anyway, so we see that the Neanderthal, going back about 40,000 years as they want to say, but again, if you listen to the Nation of Islam, they said that the white man only been around for about 6,000 years. So this 40,000 year one, we don't know who that is, but we know who the ancestors of it is, right? And so they said the reason why they went extinct is because they had lack of women. And so because of the lack of women, you know, who became, you kind of like, you know, kind of like they say, you know, they said randy. Now, randy is kind of like the way that they be stigmatizing sisters, right? That sisters are lavacious, Hottentot, right? Hot-blooded, always wanted. Well, that's what they saying about the Neanderthal woman of that time being his sister. She couldn't keep her hands off her brother because she was always randy. And so because of the randiness and so because of the lack thereof women, guess who end up getting some brotherly love? Matter of fact, I even heard it one time that they were talking about motherfucker was coming from motherfuckers was fucking their mama. But again, everything possible, right? So anyway, history, that's what it says, that these people here, Neanderthals, and what happened, they end up having a lot of defects, about 17 defects that was part of the traits because, again, of the lack of women. And again, they talk about the deformities that will come from you having copulations and offsprings with your own bloodline. And a lot of that deformities. But then who came to save the day? Old modern human came out of there, right? Came up in there, came up into that northern Spain. My Moors. That's Spain. Something about that Spain, boy. You ain't way back then. Or are they embellishing the story? Or are they talking about the Moors? Never know, right? You know, they could be talking in a connotative way or allegorical way. But we know that you were up there for about 700 some plus years, almost 800 years. 700 and I think it's like 49, somewhere around there, right? Somewhere 43, somewhere about that, right? I know everybody said 711, but it was up to about 7, right? We would say about 474 or something, all right? 732, somewhere around there, right? So what saved the bacon, once again, is brothers want to get with the brotherly love because you had to help them properly. And so it continued it on to this day. Then it somehow reverted back, and then now we all paying the price to this day, right? So some information for you that, again, the Neanderthals back in the day, that the sister and brotherly love would say Randian with each other, that it caused them to go extinct. Well, today, as one of the channels who promoted, or not promoted, but the one who did the video, when I found the information, put it out there, going on 6 years now, and that is why I'm the most hated show on the black corner of the internet, right? Because, again, you were supposed to not know that. Again, it is what it is, right? So, again, here it is again. The information is out there. It's public information. The only problem is they expecting niggas to be reading, but this nigga reads, right? So, anyway, moving on. So, right? You know, again, like they was out there doing that cheer. That's really representative of that going all the way back, in their case, 40,000 years ago, right? So, anyway, it is what it is. All right, so we're going to get into now what this is about here. Now, I'm not going to do that yet. Not yet. Right? So let's put it this way. So since we know that historically, right? Let's just say historically we know what I just read, right? About brotherly love, right? You understand what the brotherly love is really now, right? It ain't what you thought it was. So you thought, I'm Philadelphia, we about brotherly love. Yeah, nah, nigga. Yeah, nigga sing with his sister. Some sister shit. Some, you know what I'm saying? Please pass the jelly shit, right? Anyway. So if we understand that history to that, and then again the deformities, and again there's also retardation, a lot of things. Again, they were talking about the brain smaller, and they learn, and then copulating with the modern humans, allow their brains to develop and get bigger, right? So then there may be some defects in individuals, and then we don't understand why that the persistentness of this urge, right, this primal urge and all this shit coming from is because maybe some of that shit is still persistent to this day, right? And so let's just look at it this way. Well, again, this report came out, and again, I'll make some, analogies to this. Let me play it first, and then come back, and then we'll talk about it. I'll do that first. Let me do that first. All right, let's see. Come on. It's so slow, man. What's going on? Let's get it.
From the national headquarters of RT America and our nation's capital. Hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez. Because there is talk of U.S. military intervention in Venezuela, which President Trump says he is not ruling out, and because there seems to be a run-up to a war with Iran, and because we're now engaged in some way militarily in 76 countries around the world. Think about that. If you're shaking your head and as you hear that number, you probably should be. In 76 countries around the world, we have some type of military presence or some type of engagement. In fact, here, I'm going to show it to you so you can see it for yourself. It's even more dramatic when you actually look at it on a map. Now, here's the map of the world. And what I'm going to do is, first I want to light up the countries where we have military bases. There are 44 of them in all. Everything you see there in red, those are the countries where the United States now has military bases, and we've been adding an awful lot in the last 10 or 15 years. Now, let's show you the countries where we are conducting counterterrorism training. 56 countries around the world. See all of those little targets right there? That's where we suspect that there are terrorists, and we have our officials there, or our military officials training the military officials of each of those countries that you see along this map. Now, let's show the countries where we are shooting at people or shooting at buildings either using our planes or our drones. There are 7 countries in the world where we are shooting things out of the sky, essentially. Let's show those right there. And you see that in those countries as well, and by the way, those are the ones that have that little white stripe you see right there. See, like those? And it's Yemen, and it's part of Somalia, and it's Pakistan and Afghanistan and Libya, etc. And then finally, I want to show you the countries where we have actual combat troops, boots on the ground, as we often say. Soldiers, military soldiers in those countries. There are 15 of them. See them? It's all that you see right there in blue, right? So essentially, we're spread out thin. You could make the argument that this scenario has picked up speed with the invasion of Iraq, a country that is now completely destroyed, more than you could ever imagine. In fact, we have a rare video for you today from inside Iraq that we're going to be showing you in just a little bit. And there's something else we're going to do. There's something else we're going to do which I think is important. We're going to let you hear for yourself from one of the lone voices who said, if we invade Iraq, not only will we not end whatever terrorism is there or in that region, in fact, it will spread. It will be worse. He said that. This is the news with Rick Sanchez, with a story of Iraq today and an interview with none other than Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter joins us here because we believe it's time to do news again.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.
All right, so global embrace. That the United States has 76 excuse me, y'all. 76 countries around the world with military presence or engagement. Wow. So, with that being said, then that's just saying that, again, as they say, investments are protecting of the country's interests, right? And you see, predominantly, most of it was around Africa. Africa and Israel and everything around in Arabia, right? All that, right? So, with that being said is, the only way that, you know, let's say the interest or the, I'm sorry about that. Let me get a sip of water. Hold on. All right, so with all that being said, that in order for you to have that extensiveness to expand oneself, you have to have, you know, the economics, right? You have to have hellfire. I mean, you got soldiers, again, boots on ground, technology and weaponry and all these things in order to maintain your presence and to keep your men fed, clothed, sheltered, right? Ammoed up, right? And every other thing else, right? So what, again, historically has allowed our country, the United States, to have that kind of, you know, pockets, deep pockets like that, right? So we got to look at the history aspect to this, right? Okay, corporations, they got whatever their interest, and people got their interest, and, you know, that's what military is basically for. It's not so much, again, as they want to tell us that it's about, you know, protecting democracy and all. It has that too. It has that, but primarily it is out there to protect a lot of the, you know, good foreign interests and policies and things of that, right? Again, you got to protect what you own, right? So again, like a lot of people in our land are talking about all the stuff that they want to build, but if you ain't got no military to protect it, then it's, I mean, you fair game to anybody who got one. So my gripe isn't even about that in itself. Again, they're going to have to take care of that themselves, right? Those who are being occupied or being in the presence of them. My talk is here as a descendant of slaves, ADOS, right? DOS or BADOS. I'm saying, how'd you have deep pockets like that? And since you got deep pockets like that, Don't you think there's some breaking off should have been breaking off by now? You want to make everything good? I mean, if you're doing all that, you sure you're getting more wealth. So that means, I mean, with all that y'all got, I mean, damn, when you gonna break them up? Break off some of that Kit Kat bar, right? Break it off. Give it a piece of that, right?
From the national headquarters of RT America and our nation's capital, hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez. Because there is talk of U.S. military intervention in Venezuela, which President Trump says he is not ruling out, and because there seems to be a run-up to a war with Iran.
What reparations would you want?
Reparations actually begin with an acknowledgement of the historical injustices by way of chattel, colonial and neo-colonial enslavement. And therefore, one of the things that we are calling for is an all-party parliamentary commission of inquiry for truth and reparatory justice to explore the impact of this history on our present.
And what do you think of the offer of a prison?
The offer of a prison is ludicrous. In fact, prisons were developed as part of the penal system to keep enslaved Africans subjugated. And so this is really a relic of colonialism.
And Peter Bone, it's a pretty crass thing to go and do, isn't it? I mean, popular in Britain to get rid of villains, but
Well, it's not popular to build. It's not popular to build a prison in Jamaica at taxpayers' expense. Look, people have come over from Jamaica. Some of them have done things that are very bad, violence and drugs. They're in prison. They should be sent back to Jamaica. But there's no question that taxpayers should provide a prison. It's one of it wouldn't, whether it's Jamaica or anywhere else. If you do wrong, and you should be sent home. And
but what about the wider point about reparations?
Well, I think that's totally. I mean, that's
colonial.
Yeah, I mean, that is a totally different issue. And I mean, we just put the prisoners just what it is. I think just a mistake. But when we're talking about the Prime Minister's over there promoting goodwill and investing in the infrastructure of Jamaica. But when I chaired the all-party group on human trafficking, against modern-day slavery, there are more slaves today than there were at the time of Wilberforce. And what we should be doing is ending that slavery. And, of course, the Prime Minister has led. We have a modern-day slavery bill. And I think that's what we should be looking to the future, not worrying about the past.
But what's happening in terms of who has influence there? I mean, if you look at the difference between the way Britain is behaving and the way China is behaving in Jamaica, does Britain really have any influence there?
Yes, Britain has huge influence. Many of the institutions, the fact that we still have Queen Elizabeth II as the head, the fact that we still follow the Westminster parliamentary model, the education system is still built on colonial education. So Britain has a huge influence politically and economically. And a lot of British companies are in the region and are the ones who are really going to benefit from many of these packages.
Doesn't that precisely place more responsibility on David Cameron to do a little bit more, to think a bit bigger? Well,
I think he is, but I think the idea of reparations is wrong. I mean, I know that there's a group of MPs out in Jamaica at the moment, and there's a lot of close contact between the two countries. But
why is it wrong? I mean, you just gloss over that very quickly. I mean, this is a country that wouldn't exist as it is were it not for Britain's past behaviour.
But I don't think we should be looking backwards hundreds of years. We should be looking to the problems we have now, which the Prime Minister is addressing. And on the question of slavery, we should be doing a lot more to end this evil. And let's face it, slavery is worse today than it was 100 years ago.
I beg to differ. We are the descendants of the enslaved, and it's quite clear that you're quite ignorant about our condition today. There have been 2 reparations marches that have been taken place in Britain, in London, from Brixton to the Houses of Parliament on the 1st of August. This has been ignored because they want to actually deny that there is a reparations movement. Well, we exist, and we intend for our voices to be heard.
Peter Byrne?
Well, and if you're saying, was slavery a bad thing and was it terrible? Of course. But everyone accepts that. Surely what we should be addressing now, as the Prime Minister is the problems Jamaica have with infrastructure and development, and that's what we're doing. We shouldn't be... I just don't see what the advantage is of what you're saying. And I've not
Just in 10 seconds, Esther, if you will.
When you have a Prime Minister whose family benefited in compensation, and you have...
Really?
what do you mean, really?
I mean, that is the most extreme argument.
It is not an extreme argument.
If that's what you're basing on it, you're ruining your
of our humanity. And this is it's ludicrous.
I think you're living in the past. We need to live in the future.
We're talking about contemporary legacy.
I'm very sad to say we're out of time, because we could obviously go on, but thank you both very much indeed.
The first museum in America dedicated entirely to slavery opened just a few months ago. Michelle Miller traveled to Wallace, Louisiana, and found a surprising history, not just about a plantation, but her own family. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning. Well, about an hour's drive from New Orleans along the Mississippi River sits a Civil War-era sugarcane plantation. The Whitney Plantation looms as a stark reminder that our nation was built on the backs of slaves. It's a tough part of our history to remember, but one man is investing a fortune to bring it all back to life.
This house is full of secrets.
They would sleep on pallets on the floors.
Beneath whitewashed ceilings, through quiet gardens, a dark history unfolds. Tourists peer into cages where slaves were beaten. Statues of black children stare back at them. In this sanctuary, memorializing the harsh reality of slavery, one figure seems out of place.
Good to see you.
77-year-old John Cummings.
Most people operate on ready, aim, fire.
and I always operate on ready, fire, and an aim.
16 years ago, the New Orleans native and millionaire trial lawyer jumped at the chance to buy this 250-acre plantation without really knowing what he was getting into.
What didn't you know?
And I got to the slave part, and I saw some of the inventories from successions, and I was looking, man, 40 people just traded like cattle. And so then I discovered the oral histories, and that's when the light went on.
I got something here.
Well, I've got a great injustice here.
Cummings decided to dedicate the entire plantation to the slave perspective. He spent $8 million of his own money collecting antiques and commissioning art. The vacant Whitney started coming back to life.
I tell people when they say, well, why is a white man involved in this? I'll say, well, don't you remember it was a white man who caused all of this?
Here we honor the memory of 107,000 people.
To give it a voice, Cummings hired Senegalese historian Dr. Ibrahim Seck.
It is just amazing how these people...
Seck culled diaries and inventories from auction and estate sales. He found more than 100,000 names of slaves traded and sold through the Louisiana Territory. Each name is etched into these walls.
There is no order, just like it was total confusion, just like the lives of the slaves. You see, you have African names, French names, Spanish names.
Next to those names are the narratives of the slaves themselves.
Doesn't mean much, but we make them talk. It is just a way for us to give them a voice, because these people were voiceless people.
One of the voiceless, the powerless, was a slave girl named Anna who had a child named Victor. Victor was born a slave, but the records show he is the son of her white slave owner's brother. Victor's great-granddaughter is 82-year-old Sybil Morial.
We didn't talk about it.
Were they trying to save you from
I don't know if it was shame, or maybe they were trying to save us. They didn't want to inflict that sad story on us. But it was sort of affirmed that my slavery ancestry was real, and it was only 3 generations ago.
Morial only recently learned of her direct lineage, of her connection to the Whitney, and of Victor's legacy beyond slavery.
He bought land and farmed it, so he overcame that life. And then the next generation did better, and the next generation did better, and then it's my generation, educated, successful.
Morial was a civil rights worker, a college vice president, and the first black first lady of New Orleans. But I already knew that. I married her son, Mark.
But how did you feel after you brought all of us together here?
I felt that I had given you, my family, the ancestry in color.
So my children now know.
They now know.
That their great grandmother
was an African slave.
Knowing can be freeing, but most often here, it is painful. One of the last sights are these sculpted heads, replicas of 60 men beheaded for their role in a local slave revolt more than 200 years ago. But Cummings wants people to realize we aren't that far removed.
You look at the paper and you'll see that some militant group has decapitated a French journalist, and we all wonder what kind of barbarians could do that. We did that. Americans, we did that. Americans with white skin, we did that.
Do you feel guilty?
No, only if I don't do what I'm doing right now. Over half of the people who come in here cry, and I cry.
You still cry?
I do. And proud of it. It affects me. The injustice is there. You really can't do anything about it to change it. But maybe you can change some of the effects of it. And that's what I think I'm doing.
just accepting that history can do that?
Owning it.
Perhaps John's most important point is that we, even today, are still living with the effects of slavery, poverty, illiteracy, and crime. And he's on a campaign to not only provide a quality education in his state, in Louisiana, but he thinks it's really important that everyone who can go to college and who can't afford it gets to go for free.
What a story.
Yes,
oh my
bravo,
God.
Mr. Cummings.
This morning I asked myself, when I look at that story and I look at the first story we saw today,
In South Carolina.
and ask, is there a connection?
Yeah.
That's a question we all have to ask ourselves, each and every one of us, because then it opens us to the possibility of, you know, what our beliefs are, certainly what our biases are, and I think it's a question that needs to be asked. I mean, we all should question.
Really giving voice to the voices. And Michelle spending $8 million of his own money really shows a commitment. I was very touched by him.
Yeah.
And you interviewing your mother-in-law. Wow.
Love her.
Yes.
I do. I love that woman.
I know.
She's amazing.
She feels the same about
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great story.
Thank you.
The people of Marksville threw a celebration to mark the visit of 5 descendants of 12 years a slave author Solomon Northup. Northup descendant Evelyn Jackson was thrilled by the warm reception.
If Solomon could look down and see now, there is no hatred. I got so many people hugging me. You see that, hugging me and congratulating me. I'm in awe.
Some Northup descendants are of mixed racial heritage.
I didn't even know I had white cousins. I have white cousins. So I was learning more, and we're all come together as one.
Jackson and other descendants came here for the launch of an app for smartphones that helps visitors find various sites on Louisiana's Solomon Northup Trail, like this old graveyard where some of the slave masters are buried.
This is my cousin Rebecca.
Hi, nice to meet you,
Nice
Rebecca.
to meet you.
Rodney White is a descendant of a large local family that once owned slaves. He shared some of his family research with Jackson and other Northup descendants. One man identified with the evil of slavery was Edwin Epps, who once owned this land. These fields in central Louisiana on the former Epps plantation were the scene of terrible cruelty, according to Solomon Northup's account. For Leon Holmes, who visited this restored house that Northup helped build for Epps, the legacy of racial distrust is almost too great to overcome.
Nah, race will be here forever. The race issues, I feel as if it's almost something you're not going to get rid of.
In Louisiana, the legacy of slavery and subsequent discrimination includes high rates of poverty among blacks and communities divided by race. But some people, including descendants of slave owners, are trying to bridge the barriers.
Henry, come on up.
At the courthouse in Marksville, where a judge freed Solomon Northup in 1853, local dignitaries reenacted the event. Northup Trail app producer Frank Eakin, whose mother, the late scholar and civil rights activist Sue Eakin, helped authenticate the book 12 Years a Slave, wished she could have seen this mixed-race celebration.
Mom lived here in this parish. I lived here. And this, this, honestly, I never saw anything like this. I wasn't sure this was possible until coming here today.
Frank Eakin says his mother knew it wouldn't be easy to heal the wounds left by history, but he believes, as she did, in making the effort. Greg Flakus, VOA News, Marksville, Louisiana.
They had to keep these on so they wouldn't run away. And you can feel the weight of these chains. They heavy.
We are in the city of Mobile, Alabama, but in the community of Africatown. Well, this is the last place where the shipment of slaves came to this country. That's not another place. It's right here.
more video of you right there.
Okay, okay, well, make sure I have my notes.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay. I am planning a festival celebrating the descendants of the Clotilda. When I was in the 9th grade, we had Alabama history. And I remember going through the book and I saw Cudger Lewis's face and did a story about him. And I was like, oh, wow, this is my family, you know, in the Alabama history book. We're in the Alabama history book. I am so proud to say I'm a descendant. That was never, I won't say never, that wasn't a word that I used maybe 10, 15 years ago. So I'm proud to say I'm a descendant. No, I'm not just a descendant, I'm a direct descendant.
This is his son. They look almost just alike, and that's his son, and that's his son-in-law married to... My great-great-granddaddy was named Charlie Lewis. Came on the last slave ship to Clotilda. All of this stuff going during the festival so the children could relate to where I came from. So this is... It's a proud moment for me because I am an American. Because of him coming here and getting his citizenship and buying land and property to make us whole. So that's a lot of work. We know about
30 acres once owned by Abraham Lincoln in Illinois sold for $300,000. You know I'm going to say that again. 30 acres once owned by Abraham Lincoln in Illinois sold for $300,000. This story was done in Fox News, February 12, 2019. And this is how it reads. A 30-acre plot of farmland once owned by President Abraham Lincoln in rural Illinois was sold at an auction Tuesday for $300,000. Retired farmer Ron Bess sold the plot as part of his family's 590-acre farm in the city of Charleston, which included the plot owned by the nation's 16th president. The Charleston Times-Courier and Mattoon Journal-Gazette reported Tuesday Lincoln's 210th birthday that the remaining 560 acres sold for $3.9 million, or about $7,000 an acre. The land once owned by Lincoln went for $10,000 an acre. A representative told the newspaper the buyer wishes to remain anonymous. Plans for the land were not revealed. Before the auction, Bess told the Charleston Times-Courier and Mattoon Journal-Gazette that we know some people might think of a use for the land based on its historical significance, but it's been farmed the entire time. It's not like Lincoln's stovepipe hat that you can put on a shelf and say this was Lincoln's, he told the newspaper. According to the newspaper, Lincoln bought 40 acres in 1841 from his cash-strapped father, Thomas Lincoln. It is said to be the only farm he ever owned, though he let his father continue to farm it. 6 acres became part of what is now the Lincoln Log Cabin State Historic Site, while the rest stayed in private ownership until Bess purchased 30 acres in an auction in 1989. Excuse me, y'all. Sneeze came out of nowhere. Bess said he wanted to buy the land because it was adjacent to 125 acres his family already owned. He said the land had been fairly productive for him and his family, but he wasn't sure how much it would go for pre-auction. It's hard to value Lincoln's land, he said, adding that he has a copy of the original deed for sale of the land to Lincoln. The last 4 acres once owned by Lincoln were sold to Rockford businessman Dan Arnold in 2007. Best told the newspaper that Arnold once made an offer to buy his part of the farm, of the famed farmland. All right, I think I got another one that I was supposed to play for y'all. Let me go ahead and pull that up. I think it's probably one more story on that because, again, it's supposed to be about what the, let's see, maybe it's supposed to have been about the, let's see if I can pull that up. Not sure where that story went. Where is that at? All right, so there should be another story. But anyway, all right, let's see. So what you see here, there is this. You see that there is the, again, original one was what the Jamaican, about reparations for Jamaica, right? And how the British should be paying reparations, right? And again, like we have the topic here in this country, as into, again, like I said, when they had the Kamala Harris issue, when they talk about India and Jamaica. Now, the history of India and Jamaica is that Britain is the ones who colonized Jamaica, and they have the colonization in India, right? And so when people claim when they come here and then they're first generation and then say African American. Now, the last video that I did was in reference to making the claimage for the separation between that which, again, are the descendants who have been here, whose ancestry have been brought here and who generationally have been here, versus that one who can just say that they were birthed in a place, maybe documentally as a citizen, but their parentage lineage actually has a different origin, right? And so when we see that even in those lands that their people are coming from, they have a claim. But how would you make a claim in the United States when your atrocity, again, as a family, we agree that we all have been wronged. But if there's going to be any aspects to claimage and, again, name tied to a lineage, that's why African American does damage to the Black Americans in this country, is because it cloaks everyone else to be a part of the lineage, as it's kind of hide it. And there's people who come here, again, if you're coming here for a better life, that they say, and a new identity and a new start, but you have to have respect for that which was prior to you. Otherwise, it's disrespectful, right? And so you see that you have people in Jamaica who are going against the prime ministers and the queen and them of Britain and asking for the reparations for the damage. And you see in the conversation was that they were trying not to have it. We were trying to say, well, there's slavery now, and so why are we looking in the past? And matter of fact, the slaves are bigger now than they were then. But again, that's just the generation because of the, the stagnation, right? The delay of dealing with the issue. They were paying the slave owners, but never gave anything to those who actually did the work. You didn't look at the people as humans. You did, which was considered inhumanity, right? And so now you want to be innocent and say that, well, I mean, we accept the fact that it was wrong. I mean, accepting the fact, and then when she said, what about that which is, again, let's say the royalty, and what they would say, I knew you were going to go there, and that's going to mess up your argument. No, the fact is that money that had been made, again, has grown. and has expanded and has been passed down. And then there's an opulence that those people who gain from that free labor are living more comfortably than the people who put in the work, who are now at a disadvantage, disenfranchised, and are the dredge of society in some senses and instances, right? And so you see that there is a movement in that for trying for them to rectify that situation. And you see that the prime minister, what his name, I think was Peter Bone, and he's saying, why are they looking back? You know, he said, well, to end this evil, right? He said that there was more evil. The slavery now is more evil than it was back then. And she was like, I beg your pardon, huh? You know, Herman's brother was like, I beg your pardon, right? Like, how can you talk to me as a descendant of that? How can you sit there and say, see, and that's the issue here. White folks want to have both ends of it. You don't want to have again, as it said, it's a sad, what they said was a sad story on us. Well, what you mean a sad story? Okay, the sad story on you versus the sad story of the people who actually had to be a part of that. So which one would you rather take? The story, or actually had to go through the physicalities and still persistence of what that system still perpetuates to this day, right? We still see the vestiges of that system still rearing its head. May not be the way that it was then, but again, it's called evolution. The system changed and evolved into other facets of that same system, disguising itself as this democracy, right? And so you see that, you know, that you've seen where in Louisiana, where a white man decided that he's going to buy an estate, an old plantation state, and renovate it and bring it back to life and turn it into a tourist aspect of it. So let's look at it again. Due to what done transpired, and again, how again, as we read earlier about 23andMe and having the ancestry.com and being able to, you know, what they say, it's not really, again, it's kind of admissible, right? It's not really something, again, it's kind of like, you know, play, right? And so here's somebody that feel like now that because people are getting more astute and knowledgeable about what's in history, if you get those type of places, these are the places that you can now become lucrative in tourism if you buy them, because now people are going and want to go visit. Again, white people going back there so they can see what it was, and then they want to shed the tear, right? So the question becomes, are these places that are old plantations that are now becoming museums, are these going to be kind of like the crying wall in Israel? White people going there for forgiveness and bowing and asking for forgiveness rather than doing what's right by paying the descendants? Or he's saying that, again, it's too big to pay? Huh? It's too big to pay? And that, again, a lot of people say, well, why is the father holding on to the sin, the son holding on to the sins of the father? Well, according to it, from the first to the second to the third to the fourth to the fifth to the sixth to the seventh generation until he gets redeemed, right? I know some people don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear that. And so what you see also, you see that he says that, well, in the other one, you see that he took a slave plantation, rebuilt it, again, tourism, and again, he felt like this was helping him to cope with the ills that he is in agreement to that white men have done. And he said this is his part, he feel, as a way to try to mend some of the sins of the guilt that he said if he wasn't doing, he would feel. And he said, well, you know, everybody who comes here, they cries. Well, of course you're crying, because that is the true. Again, the truth don't need no partner. And once you come to the realization of what the truth is, and it's right there in your face, and then seeing that the people, now the thing is, you can go there as a representation to say what transpired as historically, but who you see in the flesh is the descendancy of them people, Must I say that again? Those people, when you go to the museums and you have your come to Jesus Wailing Wall of Israel moment and you feel some kind of way, remember that those that you see people of black skin who are considered Negroes, African American, Black Americans, and every other thing under the sun. These are the descendants of the atrocity that makes you cry. So that in itself is just a formality, but the thing is, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? So you see that there was a place in Alabama called Africa Town, huh? Said about 32 slaves, they said, that came to off of the flotilla, I think it was, right? The flotilla, right? Clotilda. Clotilda is the name, right? And this town was built and has a cemetery for a lot of those who had came. And again, they came in 1860. Again, what they said, Mobile, Alabama, right? And these here, as you've seen, the sister that was in the video talked about how she is proud to be a descendant of that which transpired. And again, there's a lot of people having a lot of problems with us being proud about who our ancestry is, being the descendancy, the progeny, right? The lineage of that strength of beautiful who prosper and died and sweat, tears, and blood to the soil that we, not all of us, but many people enjoy. And the descendancy and the legacy to that are still suffering at the pearls of a system that just wants to hold on. And now, again, as time is now revealing itself, it feels that it is time due. The bill is due. And it says, well, crying and tourism and restoration is not going to do it. And so a lot of people, again, they don't want to really deal with that. So, you know, they find other ways. But again, there is a lot. It's not just here. It depends on where your origin is. Again, I will read something to you again to give you some more information as to there's some things that are being done collectively. Now, you being here, there's something individually being done here as people are trying to get Yvette Carnell and Tone Moore, right? They're doing their things. That's at the DOS. What people say may not be a movement, but again, are we going under the terms of the European or the Caucasian, or are we going by defining it the way that we see it? Is what you got to ask yourself, right? So I gave you this other last story to this, was about that Abraham Lincoln had owned 30 acres. Abraham Lincoln had owned 30 acres of land. That's a lot of land. So the question has to become, did Lincoln own slaves? Because I sure know some black folks last name Lincoln. Do I got to say that again? I'm wondering if Abraham Lincoln, according to the story, said that he got from his father, he got it and let his father take over it while he was going to do what he was going to do, right? And it was an individual who is gone there to buy it. Matter of fact, do I got the video for that? Hold on, let me see something here, y'all. Maybe I got that. Do I got that one? So do I got that? Yeah, I might got that, y'all. Let's see. Let's see. Man, shit. Let's see. I don't. You know, it's kind of. I got some more for it. Let me go ahead and put some more. Let me put some more meat on the grill. Right? Let me put some more meat on the grill. Right? Put some more meat on this grill. Let's see how we're gonna do this. Right? Let me just not this. Let me just go ahead and let it go on. Let it go on cook. Let it go on marinate. Right? Wouldn't be right. Right? It wouldn't be right. Let it grill some more. Yeah, let me go on grill it some more. I might have jumped the gun a little bit. I got a lot for you on this here, right? We're getting closing on that 2-hour mark, so you know how it goes, right? Let's see what else I got in here. Do I got that one? Do I got that one? Do I got that one? Let's see. Let's see what I got here. Okay, so let me go ahead and play that one too. And this one here, right? So let me go ahead and let's do it again. Let me go ahead and you know, let's see. Let's see. No, come on. Where is that going? Here. Okay. Here, and I got one more. All right, let me do it. I gotta do it right, y'all. Sorry for the little delay. But you gotta pay the bills, right? For those who might be sitting there holding on your hand and not want to get something, let me give you a little reminder. Let's do it. Come on, let's get it. Come on, give me that. Yeah, let's go. Come on, let's get it.
Jamaica became a British colony in 1655, didn't it? It was taken from the Spanish, who'd already established a small trade in African slaves. And we do have some data from 1611, which shows that there were 558 African slaves and around 1,300 Spaniards at that time. But within 50 years of colonisation, so there's colonisation, Britain had established sugar estates and they were importing more slaves from West Africa. So the number had gone up to 45,000. And then by the time Britain abolished slavery in 1834, Jamaica had a population of more than 311,000 slaves compared to 16,700 Europeans. So is it possible to work out the extent to which Jamaica economically benefited from the free slave workers?
Well, yes, what we know is that Jamaica is the largest colony and where the largest amount of Africans were trafficked, then it meant that Britain, in particular the British colonial government, benefited the most. And what we know, there's about 42% of the industry was generated due to trafficking of African labour, forced labour on plantations in Jamaica. So today we can sort of work out the equivalent of how much Britain actually benefited.
So you can put a figure on it, can you?
Well, the figures are being developed, but the starting point is not really looking at the figures in terms of monetary amounts. It's really recognising this history and the huge depths of this history and the legacies of this history for Jamaicans today. And the fact that the sugar industry is still one of the largest industries in Jamaica. So in effect, you still have a plantation-based economy.
Well, let's drill into some of those figures a little bit more, because we can look at how much Britain did profit. The wealth created in Jamaica by the labour of black slaves has been estimated at around £18 million, more than half of the estimated total for the entire British West Indies. And we're talking about the sugar trade mostly, aren't we?
Well, yes. And, you know, it's interesting, this language of trade, because trade is how the colonisers saw it. It's not how the enslaved saw it. And for the enslaved, it was forced labour, it was trafficking, it was a genocide. And we know that even to produce sugar, the life expectancy for people working on these plantations was in between 7 and 9 years. This was hard, back-breaking labour, and it was a form of early terrorism, transnational terrorism.
OK, well, let's take a look at how extensive Britain's role in slave trading was. It's hard to be sure on exact numbers, but estimates are that British ships took around 1 million people to Jamaica and 3.4 million across the Americas, although many believe the number is much greater than that. The only country to carry more people over the duration of the slaving period was Portugal. So how extensive was Britain's slaving compared to other countries?
It began to dominate the enslavement of African people. I mean, a lot of focus is put on abolition in 1807, abolition of the Slave Trade Act, and then the Abolition of Slavery Act in 1833. We don't focus on that period of the British government's involvement from 1563, when Queen Elizabeth I was on the throne, and actually bankrolled this. And so we're looking at a huge period, and we see the development of ports in Britain, Liverpool, Bristol first, Liverpool, and then London, and the huge amount of economic benefits that came to this country.
OK, let's take a look at if Britain were to pay reparations, and we should say that they're not saying that they would, how many countries could have a claim? Well, this map is by no means exhaustive, but in the red are the main countries where Britain captured or bought people to sell into slavery, and in blue are the main countries where slaves were transported by British ships. You can see an awful lot of them there in the Caribbean, very small there to pick out. But in fact, the whole area was probably affected.
The whole area. And in fact, what we are saying is it's not just a claim of these countries, it's a claim of the peoples in these countries. We know that on abolition of slavery in 1833, those who were enslavers got compensated to the tune of 20 million at the time, which in today's figures conservatively is 17 billion. So the enslavers got compensated for the loss of their property. The enslaved got nothing, and in fact were forced to pay for their own so-called emancipation to the tune of another £27 million, which was paid for by a period of 4 to 6 years apprenticeship. And so the legacy continues.
Esther Stanford Jose, very interesting to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
The purpose of my visit is to look to the future. I think, frankly, while Britain and the Caribbean and Jamaica have had a very strong relationship, we've underplayed it.
Do you think that Britain and the Cameron and the taxpayers should pay reparations to countries like Jamaica for what happened during the slave trade?
Absolutely not.
It's a bit more complicated than just, yes or no, I guess.
Oh, that's a tough question. In general, yes, you can't just dismiss the history of a country, I think.
So you think it's something that should be on the diplomatic negotiating table?
Yes.
Probably, yeah. I think probably some form of compensation is due, considering the relative disparity in standards of living. Yeah. So I think that probably is fair.
It just seems a bit late, really. Well, I live and work in Bristol, and that's been raised a few times, but I have to say that's history. I mean, it wasn't just a one-way thing. You think of the Barbary slavers that came to the south of Ireland and south of England and took slaves the other way. Do they have to pay for what they've done in the past?
The Broken Chains Festival in Amsterdam commemorates the day slaves were set free 154 years ago. 45,000 were set free in the former Dutch colony Suriname. Many descendants of slaves from the South American country now live in the Netherlands. Details of their history have long been hidden away in an archive in Suriname's capital, Paramaribo. Now, these handwritten 19th century books, containing the personal data of 80,000 enslaved people in the former Dutch colony, are about to be published online. Ank de Vogel has been searching for her roots in archives. She found that her great-great-grandfather came from Africa and was sold to Dutch plantation owners.
My children asked me about my great-grandparents, and I couldn't give them any answer. So where I'm going to, I need to know where I'm coming from.
Her findings were not always easy to deal with.
Slaves are no human beings.
So they were seen as property?
Property, right. And that was real difficult to handle that.
From the late 16th century onwards, the Dutch forced African people into slavery. Taken from their homes and sold to slave owners, thousands ended up on plantations in Suriname. Following abolition and independence, many descendants of the Dutch colony came to live in the Netherlands.
I think it's an important database, of course, for people who are descendants of people in slavery. And you have to imagine in the Netherlands, more than 400,000 people are direct descendants of enslaved persons or slave owners. But it's also important for our society.
What most people don't realize is how much wealth slavery brought to the Netherlands. Amsterdam thrived on products coming from slave labor on plantations like cotton, cacao and tobacco. And you can still find traces of this past, symbols that people pass by every day. For some descendants, the end of slavery is a day to celebrate freedom. Still, the lack of a government apology is hard to accept.
When it comes to slavery, I hope that all the other Amsterdammers connect with me and my heart and want to know the pain.
It would be good if they would apologise. Some kind of recognition would be good.
For Ank de Vogel, being able to confirm her family roots has brought her peace.
That's good.
She hopes that opening up the archives will shed more light on this dark chapter in history. Fleur Launsbach, Al Jazeera, Amsterdam.
Dutch slavery, our dark past. You know I'm going to say that again. Dutch slavery, our dark past. This story was done July 20th, 2013, and this is how it reads. Last week, the CARICOM, which is Caribbean Community, made an announcement that they will try to demand financial compensation for the damage that was done by their former colonizers in the era of slavery. One of the members of CARICOM is Suriname, a former colony of the Netherlands and former nucleus of Dutch slavery. Their president and our friend Desi Bouterse has taken a seat in a commission that will coordinate the political trajectory that should realize these compensations. This announcement has led to a new heated debate whether we or can redeem the guilt of our dark past by way of financial compensation. This comes merely a week after the official commemoration of the abolition of slavery, 150 years ago. You could easily say that our dark past is a hot issue once again. So let's take a look at it and clarify some of the difficult issues in the present debate. The boring facts that you need to know. There were approximately 12 million African slaves transported to the New World by European countries. The Dutch brought 400,000 of them to Suriname, 16 to Essequibo, 15,000 to Berbice, 11,000 to Damari, 25,000 to Recife, and 100,000 to the Spanish colonies via Curaçao or Curaçao. Our share in total of the slave trade to the New World was never more than 5%. No European country made more financial losses due to the slave trade than the Dutch furthermore. The Dutch seemed to care less for their slaves than the English or the French. Approximately 2 out of 1,000 slaves died every day on Dutch slave ships per month, compared to 1 on English slave ship and 1.5 on French ships. The reason for that was the bad medical care on Dutch ships compared to the English and the French, who made more profit out of their slave trade. That was mainly because of their area of distribution for slaves in the New World was larger and because they took better care of them. They were less indifferent to the physical conditions of their slaves, and they had more medical knowledge to keep them healthy. We didn't know that less humidity, more water, more food, and more fresh air could keep more of them alive. How could we have known? Why did we trade black slaves instead of poor whites? That was purely a racist matter. We could barely see them as equal human beings, and slavery was legitimized by the Bible. The Bible has always been a good tool to legitimize every moral objectionable activity, even though it presents itself as a moral guide. You could legitimize throwing gay people from flat buildings or not vaccinating your children, and if you read it backwards, it could even legitimize child abuse. Thank you, Lord, for giving us the Bible. But let's continue with more serious matters, because there will be plenty of more opportunities to ridicule the Bible. Even though it was barely profitable for the Dutch to trade slaves, we were one of the last European countries to abolish slavery. Why? First of all, because we were even more morally indifferent than our fellow European brothers were. We felt no moral affinity with the enlightened ideals of the French Revolution. And so there were very few people in Holland that were dedicated to fight for the abolition of slavery. Secondly, we already lost so much of our grandeur and trading opportunities we had possessed in the Golden Age that we stubbornly clung to one of the few opportunities that were left for us in the New World, despite the fact that it was barely profitable. To give this up would be another blow to our pride and our image. Thirdly, there was no alternative for the men who made their living out of it, so they just kept on going until someone else forbade them to do it. Without their meager income for the slave trade, they wouldn't have had any income at all, and we didn't want that to happen. Last but not least, it took us a while before we found the money with which to compensate the slave owners. Yes, the slave owners, not the slaves. We actually used the money that we had earned with our cultural seals in the East Indies when the system became very lucrative for the Dutch government in the 19th century, even though we had to squeeze every penny out of the locals to make it profitable. However, as I mentioned earlier, we had no moral scruples regarding black people and locals in our colonies. That's why we used the blood money to compensate the people that maintained our other morally objectionable activity, slavery. The English actually paid 20 million pounds sterling in taxes to compensate their slave owners and abolish slavery. That's another example of our moral indifference compared to that of our European neighbors. Therefore, you could say that we have many moral deficiencies with regards to our slaves driving past, and maybe even more than many other countries. But that rests the question. Should we have to compensate the descendants of those slaves for that financially? Two weeks ago, it says to compensate or not. 2 weeks ago, our Vice PM, Prime Minister Atje, said that we are deeply regretful and have much remorse for the dark page in Dutch history. At the commemoration of our abolition of slavery 150 years ago, there was no official apology as some of the descendants would have liked to have seen, but there is actually no real difference between an official apology and expression of deep remorse from a semantic point of view. There are, however, different legal consequences connected with these different ways of apologizing. Should a state officially apologize, they will legally enlarge the chances for the descendants and the CARICOM to obtain financial compensation. Even if we would like to pay these compensations, it's almost impossible to figure out who should pay them, because the shipping companies which transported the slaves don't exist anymore. The Dutch state then, maybe, how much should they pay, and to whom precisely? It's almost impossible to do historical justice to our dark past in a financial way, and because of that, it will probably never happen. We actually already pay billions to our former colonies before and after they became independent, although it was disguised as development aid. How long can you hold our generation morally responsible for the things that happened many generations ago? The only way that we can do this, pass justice and come to an agreeable solution with the descendant of the slaves, is to commemorate this dark page regularly together. We should suppress it in our collective memory anymore, as if Piet Hen J.P. Cohen, the Silver Fleet, the world's famous Dutch painter, and our overwhelming wealth were the only aspects of our Dutch golden age. In our colonial past, commemoration seems to be the right thing to do and the only thing we are morally obligated to, even if we do this annually at the National Monument in Amsterdam, which is not the right place for a historical perspective. Most of the slave ships actually left Middelburg and Vlissingen. Besides that, slavery wasn't present in the Netherlands, but only in Africa and the New World. So we have to commemorate slavery separately there and the slave trade here. But that's just all historical blah blah. From now on, I would like to say, as I mentioned before, let us commemorate this past, dark past together so we can come to terms with it and do justice to the descendants of victims and perpetrators. And let do it quick, because the next heated issue about another dark page in Dutch history is creeping in already. Srebrenica, we wouldn't be able to brush them off by saying that we won't pay them, because that happened many centuries ago. Reindeer farmer van Porgen, see, okay, we said that, okay, I think that's it, y'all. Is that it? No, that's all right, so we had a lot of there to chew on a little bit. Again, you see the sister again that was living in Jamaica. They end up spreading out the numbers, right? Showing, right? See, it seems like now that reparation is on the table, it seems like everybody now, the numbers are getting smaller. Y'all noticing that? Now that the descendancies and the descendants and the lineage of the children of the atrocity, now that they're trying to be compensated, seems like everybody's trying to, let out the cargo. Well, no, we didn't have that many. It wasn't us. We only had a small portion of it, right? We didn't have as much as the rest. Those other guys, they were more adequate. They had a bigger portion of it. And matter of fact, look at theirs go all the way over there. It had nothing to really do with us. So we try to show the map and show that where she's talking about from Jamaica and talking about where Britain was, it was more in the Americas. Well, again, that's the whole thing here. The claim here is going to be more than just the country of the United States. There's going to be other people who will be a part attributed to it, because there was a lot of heads involved. All I have to do is, again, I'm eventually do the, give you the history called the Asiento, A-S-I-E-N-T-O, right? The Asiento. And that's going to break down, and again, that's, you won't get nothing on the internet on that one. You're going to have to get into the books to find that stuff. But anyway, that's when you're going to find out all the different hands that exchanged when it came to dealing with transporting ancestors, right? Buying and selling, and the contracts and things of that, right? So you see that they were sitting down and giving the numbers and showing how the numbers, went from one point in time to another. Again, the question becomes, how do they pay? And is it too big to be paid? And should we really be holding this cloud over their heads, right? And again, it's not for you to determine. Again, as I'll say and I'll keep saying, that the insurance policy had a fine print on it. See, those before you got to get all 100%. They didn't have no taxes. They didn't get taxed. They got 100%. They lived the opulent life. They at the expense of the backs of our ancestors. There was a lot of raping going on. There was a lot of atrocities and killings and mutilations and everything else you can name, right? And as time went on, there was some beneficiaries of those of the modern time. Some of you still benefit from the, opulence and economical power that came with not paying somebody working for hundreds of years. I mean, They even, to the fact they even trying to get it down to 200 years, right? So again, what you're seeing now is them trying to cut, right? Cut it, right? And so you see that the Dutch, right, and about the dark history that it had, and again, when they talk about here 1619, isn't it was the Dutch that supposedly brought the 20 odd numbers of slaves that came on the Dutch boat, right? So the Dutch had his hand here as well, but it said, well, we didn't really do much because again, we lost a lot of our slaves through the transition because again, we were not good at it. We didn't know how to do it. We didn't have enough water. We didn't food. We didn't know. But to see France and Britain and them, they were more better medically trained and they had more knowledge of it. So they were better than it than us. I mean, we really didn't do it, and we didn't bring it to the Netherlands. It was only in Africa and then bring it to the New World. We didn't do all that. You know what I'm saying? Don't hold us so much accountable for it because again, that's in the past. Let's worry about now the future. We all recognize the fact that it was wrong. No, it's not going to work like that. It's not going to work like that. You know that y'all are entitled to, again, as the beneficiaries, is now to be, you have to be the recipients of that which had to be paid. And you can't blame us for that. You have to blame your ancestors for that. You have to say they left you a, what they call that, a time bomb, right? They set it back then, and now it's ticking to detonate now. And so, is it fair? Well, you can't ask us, and we'll see if that's fair. Not just that's what it is. And so, again, they're saying, well, who's to pay for this? I mean, okay, we can understand that the country might be able to pay for it, but again, what about these ship companies? Well, maybe you're going to have to go through your files and find out all those who got paid and who are the descendants of that and have them to pay, right? Now, again, here's the other thing, too. Now, when we're talking about the Western Hemisphere and we're talking about the Americas, North and South, we have claim. Now, again, this doesn't make me, again, to shit on or to shade. Now, those who come here who may be from the continent, right? When grown folks talking about this business, it's incumbent on you to support, but don't say nothing. Let me say that again. Family of the continent. When grown folks talking about slave business, it's not incumbent on you who trying to get here to get in the game and trying to get you a cut when that ain't what you cut from. We cut in the family, but you have not, lineage-wise, have the atrocities in your bloodline. Here, in the Americas, you can be supportive, but you can't be trying to actually, sidetrack those who are trying. You could be supportive. Matter of fact, it would be incumbent on you to be supportive because if they should ever get eventually one day, after y'all can get rid of China and all them and Russia and them, and then you got America back in there, maybe you'll be able to use it. But until then, it is what it is. It's nothing to be envious or jealous because again, see, like other people are still getting more benefits than the ones who are the descendants of it. So it would be incumbent, really, it's not to say much. You benefit off of a lot of things that maybe some people shouldn't be getting. Instead of just being, shh, don't say nothing. Some of you are out here on social media talking as if like you entitled. Stop it. You're not. You're just not. That's family talk. We're talking with love. We're trying to, again, I don't want to do, but I'm just saying, stop it. You're not entitled to that. So we at the 2-hour 15 mark, and I got a little bit more to go. I'm gonna do less little talking because again, I don't wanna miss the point here, right? And again, like I said, there's just so much. Everybody has theirs. But again, you're gonna have to be like at the beginning of the show. You got to be at the beef pat. You got to be at the store, right? Trying to wait on your beef patty. You trying to jump the gun and come in with a bat, and you gonna tear up shit because you can't wait. You got to wait your turn. You can't just jump the damn line. Y'all still haven't finished it, and whatever atrocity that's going on, I still. Right now, proud of it, right? So you're going to have to be patient. You can't jump and just say, just because. It don't happen. It don't work like that. All right, so now I'm going to do this. Let me see how I do this now here. All right, okay. Let me see. I got to do this, y'all. Hold on. This here. That goes there, right? That'll go there. And let's see, that'll go there, right? That go there, right? See, and I'm touching everybody this time. Last time, I just go ahead and said, now those only ones who are not attributed to this is our brothers and family from the continent. Everybody in the Western Hemisphere, this is what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's not. You can't be mad at us, man. I don't get it. You can't be mad and jealous at us. We the ones are the bears of that. And it wouldn't be right. So let me see. All right, let me make sure all this is right now, because I'm gonna ride out after that one, because I'm already at the 2 hour. I don't want to make it too long, because again, people go fall asleep and shit, right? I'm not saying y'all falling asleep, you know what I'm saying. Because it was just wanted to be more of some information and some visuals. Because again, last time I think I pissed a lot of people off, but again, it's okay. Because again, the truth don't need no partner. And yes, I'm gonna go ahead and end up there with that there. I'm also go ahead and no, I ain't gonna end it there. I won't end it there. All right, so do one more time to get another PSA in here. And let me get another PSA. Right? Because it's just for those who sitting there and you ain't moved yet, ain't did what you're supposed to do, right? So I have to remind you, if you're sitting in there, let a brother hold something again. What I do to get a show off, respect what I do, because nobody else won't do it. And again, this is why it's the most hated show on the black corner of the internet. One day you're gonna really figure it out. All right? So let me go ahead and get this. Let's get it. Really? That's what I'm saying. Really? It's crazy, man. Get it.
The more that is uncovered, the more horrific Brazil's slave trading past is revealed to have been. About 2 million slaves landed at this wharf, now an archaeological site, between the 1760s and the 1830s. A few blocks away, Mercedes Guimarães was renovating her house in 1996 when she found bones, thousands of human bones. It turned out to be a mass grave containing the burnt bodies of thousands of slaves, those who had died after the long and arduous journey from Africa.
People say there is no racism in Brazil, but there is. I discovered that racism in Brazil while fighting for this history.
Mercedes House is now this museum and research centre at the heart of the UNESCO award.
Much of Brazil has never really recognised its African roots or marked its foundations in slavery. Many Afro-Brazilians are now saying it's about time the country did. Some of the argument is centred on this neighbourhood of Rio de Janeiro, now recognised as crucial to the debate.
Brazil was the last country to officially abolish slavery in 1888. It had been vital to the coffee, sugar and gold industries. However, discrimination continues, perhaps best symbolised by President Michel Temer's all-white cabinet, or that black Brazilians still earn 40% less than their white colleagues.
The way I see it, black people in Brazil are still slaves. We are still slaves to an historical process that keeps growing in the cities. 50% of the black population live in the favelas. Another 25% live in poor housing. 3/4 of the black population is poor, extremely poor.
More than half of all Brazilians define themselves as being black or of mixed race. Well represented in the arts and in sport, many say they're viewed as second-class citizens.
The award will give more strength to the Afro-descendants. It will give strength to us as Brazilians to recognize that a huge crime against humanity was committed here.
Many here in Rio hope UNESCO's recognition of the country's brutal slave history will help more to understand race and tackle racism in today's Brazil. Daniel Schweimer, Al Jazeera, Rio de Janeiro.
In Brazil, the wounds of slavery will not heal. You know I'm going to say that again. In Brazil, the wounds of slavery will not heal. This story was done, and it says made for minds. I guess I don't have a date on here yet, but I will tell you when it does, right? So we're going to read this from the DW.com, and this is how it reads. Brazil abolished slavery 130 years ago, but its society has failed to deal with the crimes that took place. Many Afro-Brazilians remain trapped in a cycle of violence and slave labor, legacies of Brazil's slave trade. Evidence of the massive crime remains hidden for a very long time. Before his Italian bride arrived in September 1843, Emperor Pedro II of Brazil ordered the wharf at Rio de Janeiro Old Harbor filled in. Between 1774 and 1831, some 700,000 slaves disembarked there, more than any other place in the world. Yet the emperor wanted nothing to do with that fact. Africans who died during the passage to Brazil were often carried up into the nearby hills, where their bodies were thrown into piles stacked between household refuse and dead cows. In 1996, a family discovered the remains of this cemetery of new blacks. Under the foundation of their house, the commemorative site they created is now about to be closed. Brazil's government hasn't given them a penny in years. Rio Valongo Wharf, on the other hand, was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site a year ago. The excavated slave docklands are the hearts of a neighborhood known as Little Africa. It is a model tourist magnet. Still, reminders of slavery seem to be unwelcome on an official level in Brazil even today. Forced decision. The Golden Law, issued by Prince Imperial Isabel on May 13, 1888, officially ended slavery in Brazil. It came without a bloody civil war as in the United States 1861-1865, or a slave rebellion as in Haiti in 1794. When England prohibited Brazil's transatlantic slave trade by passing the Aberdeen Act in 1845, Brazilian plantations were faced with a labor shortage. That shortage was compensated with European immigrants who did not have to fight for their freedom as slaves often did. Brazil did not end slavery until the economic system it was based upon could no longer be maintained. It was the last country in the Americas to do so. The legacy of 350 years was staggering. Half of all slaves that crossed the Atlantic landed in Brazil, 2 million of them in Rio alone, and another 5.8 million along the coast. Brazilian plantations exhibit a ravenous hunger for human flesh throughout the era of slavery. It is estimated that 1 in 10 Africans died during the transatlantic crossing. When ships arrived, families were split up. The men were sent to work the fields of the country's most remote regions, while the women, raped by their white masters, brought forth generations after generations of new Brazilians. It seemed the white masters were not content to exploit nature and man. They dominated their servants literally down to their flesh and bones. Helpless rather than jubilation. Despite that, the belief that slavery in Brazil was more humane than everywhere else still persists today. Imagines images and reports from that time, which rarely if ever gave witness to the gruesome reality of the situation. Helped create the myth. When Brazil's slaves were finally set free in 1888, they faced economic catastrophes. Rather than experiencing the officially proclaimed jubilation of freedom, they were simply left to their individual fates, without land, without money, and without education. And that is largely where their descendants still stand today. Millions of Afro-Brazilians today live in the same precarious circumstances that their forebears faced 130 years ago. The impoverished Fila shacks that populated the outskirts of Brazil's major cities are not unlike those of the 19th century. Millions of Brazilians have yet to become a welcome part of society. Young blacks make up 2/3 of Brazilians' 60,000 victims of violent crimes each year. They also make up 2/3 of the country's prison population. Brazil offered them no other perspective than the cycle of violence that is rooted in the age of slavery. Namely, rebellion against a hostile society and violence against each other, whereas whites are as untouchable today as they were black then or back then. Black violence in all of its desperation and self-hatred is directed towards other blacks. The legacy of slavery is not easily shaken off, says Italian psychoanalyst Cottardo Caligaris, who has lived in Brazil since the 1980s. He says every Brazilian carries the figure of brutality dominant colonizers and exploiters within them. Every single relationship in the power structure of Brazil is inhabited by the specter of slavery, says Caligaris. Power, he says, is also articulated through corporal dominance. It is the nosy ghost of slavery that refuses to go away. Modern slavery. And slavery itself refused to go away as well. One still thinks of Hollywood version of slavery in which subjects are chained to benches and roll under the lash, says the French Dominican friar Xavier Plassat. But today people are enslaved by economic dependence rather than chains. Since the 1980s, Plassat has been fighting alongside other Catholics against this modern form of slavery. Thanks to their effort, the Brazilian government passed a law outlawing such modern slave labor in 1995. Since then, some 54,000 working slaves have been set free. Such people labored in the grazing lands of the Amazons, the illegal sewing factories of Sao Paulo, and the charcoal production regions of the northeastern Brazil for unfair wages in 2017. Seemingly out of the blue, Brazilian President Michel Temer sought to water down the term modern slavery by removing forced economic dependence as one of his defining criteria. Temer was forced into a quick retreat, however, after he was confronted with a wave of global indignation. Celso Azevedo, an activist in the Afro-Brazilian social movement known collectively as Black Movement, says the cloud of slavery can only be lifted if Brazil's dark-skinned population finally becomes the protagonist of its own history. Azevedo is the founder of the country's first political party for blacks. The Frente Fiel Brazil faced the cries of discrimination from white Brazilians. Azevedo points to the country's samba schools as an example of what happens when predominantly black organizations are open to whites. Within a very short time, The whites had taken control of the summer schools. He does not want to see that happen in his political party. He claims that whites will never be satisfied playing a supporting role because they want to call the shots. In contrast, we blacks like to hide behind the whites because we fear playing the leading role, but we need to finally learn how to take the lead.
A paradise of 32 islands and keys.
The perfect getaway. St Vincent and the Grenadines is marketed as a Caribbean holiday destination, an escape from the rest of the world. But in fact, there are more than a dozen nations in this region which will never escape from their dark past.
Native genocide and slavery in the Caribbean have awful consequences.
The Atlantic slave trade involved the deportation of an estimated 30 million black men, women and children from Africa. From the 16th to the 19th century, they were sold to European slave traders who transported them to North and South America. Caribbean leaders want compensation from Britain, France and the Netherlands, and they're taking their fight to the United Nations. The issue has featured in a number of speeches at this week's General Assembly.
The need for serious dialogue on the topic of reparations.
For reparations for injustices suffered by African slaves and their descendants.
But who's listening? When US President Obama appeared on Monday, day one, it was a packed house. Mid-afternoon on Friday, President Gonsalves stood behind the podium and had a very different view. The room was about 1/4 full, and as he spoke,
the European nations which engaged in conquest.
It didn't seem like many were paying attention. People buried their heads in their electronic devices or simply struggled to stay awake. European countries involved in the slave trade left their seats empty or sent junior staff.
You can boil it down to a power analysis, who has it and who doesn't.
Khan Ross is a former diplomat and now helps political groups navigate the United Nations and other institutions. He knows how the diplomatic game is played.
The big countries are extremely good at saying, yes, we're listening, and we pay careful attention to the views of the Maldives about the future of the porpoise or whatever issue it is. They have, hundreds of diplomats who are paid precisely to prepare those kind of lines. It doesn't mean they are paying attention.
Ross believes the top-down approach to world politics is slowly shifting, but he's also convinced that the United Nations will be the last place to change. The UN is undoubtedly the biggest international body in the world, but its sheer size can also be an obstacle. The biggest hitters always get the most attention, which means this may not be the best forum for countries with a small voice fighting to be heard. Kath Turner, Al Jazeera at the United Nations, New York.
Exploiting black labor after the abolition of slavery. You know I'm going to say that again. Exploiting black labor after the abolition of slavery. This story was done February the 6th, 2017. Going back a little bit in the conversation, as this is history, so we have to go there, right? Check it out, and this is how it reads. The United States criminal justice system is riven by racial disparity. The Obama administration pursued a plan to reform it. An entire news organization, the Marshall Project, was launched in late 2014 to cover it. Organizations like Black Lives Matter and the Sentencing Project are dedicated to unmaking a system that unjustly targets people of color. But how did we get this system in the first place? Our ongoing historical research project investigates the relationship between the press and convict labor. While that story is still unfolding, we have learned what few Americans, especially white Americans, know: the dark history that produced our current criminal justice system. If anything, it is to change, if we are ever to end this racial nightmare and achieve our country, said James Baldwin puts it. We must confront this system and the blighted history that created it. During Reconstruction, the 12 years following the end of the Civil War and the abolition of slavery, former slaves made meaningful political, social, and economic gains. Black men voted and even held public office across the South. Biracial experiments in governance flowered. Black literacy surged, surpassing those of whites in some cities. Black school, churches, and social institutions thrived. As the prominent historian Eric Foner writes in his masterwork on Reconstruction, black participation in Southern public life after 1867 was the most radical development of the Reconstruction years, a massive experiment in interracial democracy without precedent in the history of this or any other country that abolished slavery in the 19th century. But this movement was short-lived. As W.E.B. Du Bois wrote, the slave went free, stood a brief moment in the sun, then went back again toward slavery. History is made by human actors and the choices they make. According to Douglas Blackman, author of Slavery by Another Name, the choices made by Southern white supremacists after abolition and the rest of the country's accommodations explain more about the current state of American life, black and white, than the antebellum slavery that preceded. Designed to reserve black advances, redemption was an organized effort by white merchants, planters, and businessmen and politicians that followed Reconstruction. Redeemers employed vicious racial violence and state legislation as tools to prevent black citizenship and equality promised under the 14th and 15th Amendment. By the early 1900s, nearly every southern state had barred black citizens not only from voting but also from serving in public office, on juries, and in the administration of the justice system. The South's new racial caste systems were not merely political and social. It was thoroughly economic. Slavery had made the South agricultural-based economy the most powerful force in the global cotton market. But the Civil War devastated this common economy. How to build a new one? Ironically, white leaders found a solution in the 13th Amendment, which ended slavery in the United States in 1865. By exploiting the provisions allowing slavery and involuntary servitude to continue as a punishment for crime, they took advantage of a penal system predating the Civil War and used even during Reconstruction. A new form of control. With the help of profiteering industrialists, they found yet a new way to build wealth on the bound labor of black Americans, the convict lease system. Here's how it worked. Black men, and sometimes women and children, were arrested and convicted for crimes enumerated in the black codes, state laws criminalizing petty offenses and aimed at keeping free people tied to their former owners, plantations, and farms. The most sinister crime was vagrancy, the crime of being unemployed, which brought a large fine that few blacks could afford to pay. Black convicts were leased to private companies, typically industry profiting from the region's untapped natural resources. As many as 200,000 black Americans were forced into back-breaking labor in coal mines, turpentine factories, and lumber camps. They lived in squalid conditions, chained, starved, beaten, flogged, and sexually violated. They died by the thousands from injury, disease, and torture. From both the state and private corporations, the opportunities for profit were numerous. For the state, convict lease generated revenues and provided a powerful tool to subjugate African Americans and intimidate them into behaving in accordance with the new social order. It also greatly reduced state expenses in housing and caring for convicts. For the corporation, convict lease provided droves of cheap, disposable labor who could be worked to the extremes of human cruelty. Every southern state leased convict, and at least 9/10 of all these convicts were black. In reports of the period, the term convict and Negroes are used interchangeably. Of those black Americans caught in the convict lease system, a few were men like Henry Nisbet, who murdered 9 other black men in Georgia. But the vast majority were like Green Cottonham, the central figure in Blackman's book, who was snatched into the system after being charged with vagrancy. A principal difference between antebellum slavery and convict leasing was that, in the latter, the laborers were only the temporary property of their masters. On one hand, this meant that after their fine had been paid off, they would potentially be let free. On the other, it meant the companies leasing convicts often absolved themselves of concern about workers' longevity. Such convicts were viewed as disposable and frequently worked beyond human endurance. The living conditions of leased convicts are documented in dozens of details, first-hand reports spanning decades and covering many states. In 1883, Blackman Rice, Alabama prison inspector Reginald Dawson, described leased convicts in one mind being held on trivial charges in desperate, miserable conditions, poorly fed, clothed, unnecessarily chained and shackled. He described the appalling numbers of death and appalling numbers of maimed and disabled men held by various forced labor entrepreneurs spanning the entire state. Dawson's report had no perceptible impact on Alabama's convict leasing system. The exploitation of black convict labor by the penal system and the industrialists was central to Southern politics and economics of the era. It was a carefully crafted answer to black progress during the Reconstruction, highly visible and widely known. The system benefited the national economy too. The federal government passed up one opportunity after another to intervene. Convict lease ended at different times across the earlier 20th century, only to be replaced in many states by another racialized and brutal system, a method of convict labor, the chain gang. Convict labor, debt peonage, lynching, and the white supremacist ideology of Jim Crow that supported them all produced a bleak social landscape across the South for African Americans. Black Americans developed multiple resistance strategies and gained major victories through the Civil Rights Movement, including Brown versus Board of Education, the Civil Rights Act, and the Voting Rights Act. Jim Crow fell, and America moved closer than ever to fulfilling its democratic promise of equality and opportunity for all. But in the decades that followed, a tough-on-crime politics with racist undertone produced, among other things, harsh drugs and mandatory minimum sentences, laws that were applied in racial desperate ways. The mass incarceration system exploded, with the rate of imprisonment quadrupling between the 1970s and today. Michelle Alexander's family called the new Jim Crow in her book of the same name. Today, the United States has the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world, with 2.2 million behind bars, even though crime has decreased significantly since the early 1990s, and while black Americans make up only 13% of the United States population, they make up 37% of the incarcerated population. 40% of police killings of unarmed police are black men, who make up merely 6% of the population, according to a 2015 Washington Post report. Doesn't have to be this way. We can choose otherwise. Africatown. Africatown, also known as Africatown, USA, and Plateau, is a historic community located 3 miles north of downtown Mobile, Alabama. It was formed by a group of 32 West Africans who in 1860 were included in the last known illegal shipments of slaves to the United States. The Atlantic slave trade had been banned since 1808, but 110 enslaved people held by the King of Dahomey were smuggled into Mobile on the flotilla, which was burned and scuttled to try to conceal its illicit cargo. More than 30 of these people, believed to be the ethnic Yoruba and Fan, founded and created their own community in what became Africatown. They retained their West African customs and language into the 1950s, while their children and some elders also learned English. The last survivor of the original group, Kujo Kazula Lewis, lived until 1935. Down from a peak population of 12,000 when paper mills operated there, In the 21st century, the community has about 2,000 residents. It is estimated 100 of them are descendant of the people from Clotilda. Other descendants live across the country. In 2009, the neighborhood was designated as a site on Mobile African American Heritage Trail. The African Town Historic District was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2012. It related Old Plateau Cemetery, also known as African Town Graveyard, was founded in 1876. It has been given a large historical plaque telling its history. Jamaica refused to back down on demands for reparation for 300 years of slavery. You know I'm going to say that again. Jamaica refuses to back down on demands for reparations for 300 years of slavery. This story was done in the, looks like Face to Face Africa, July 6, 2018, and this is how it reads. Jamaica is still on the pursuit of reparations for slavery, the effects of which are still being felt in the country. According to the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, Olivia Babesy Grange, it is the responsibility of the government to ensure that reparations are paid for what their ancestors went through under slavery. We must pursue reparations. The great wrong must be set right. To those who would say slavery was a long time ago and we should simply move on, I point to them the disability impact of slavery even today. More than 300 years of oppression and brutality has left lasting scars, she told the House of Representatives. According to Grange, the National Council on Reparations is reviewing the evidentiary basis of the demand for reparatory justice for Britain for Native genocide, African enslavement, deceptive Indian indentureship, other colonial injustices, and the continuing legacy of colonialism. In 2016, Jamaica made a demand to Britain to start the reparation process, stating that it is the duty of the previous colonial masters to alleviate the continued suffering of the Caribbean people. In February 2018, it was revealed that a loan taken in 1834 by the British government to pay slave owners was only repaid in full in 2015, and that British had argued against reparations. Jamaica is not the only country to seek payback for slavery. A regional body known as the Caribbean Reparation Commission was set up to establish the case for the reparation by the government of all the former colonial powers. It is set up a 10-step plan for the same. The Caribbean Reparation Committee, this is what it says, going to the home page, the 10-point action plan. And this, which is called the CARICOM, right? It's loading up. I don't know why it went to load up again. Okay. Give me 1 second, y'all, and then here it goes. All right. 10-point action plan. The Caribbean Reparation Commission outlines the path to reconciliation, truth, and justice for the victims of slavery and their descendants. Says Journal of Pan-African Studies with speeches by Sir Hilary Beckles, the CARICOM 10-point reparation plan, and several other speeches, essays. What is the Caribbean Reparation Commission? The Caribbean Reparation Commission is a regional body created to establish the moral, ethical, and legal case for the payments of reparations by the government of all the former colonial powers and the relevant institution of those countries to the nations and people of the Caribbean communities for the crimes against humanity of native genocide, the transatlantic slave trade, and racialized system of chattel slavery. Reparation point. 1. Full formal apology. 2. Reparations. 3. Indigenous People Development Program. 4. cultural institutions. 5, public health crisis. 6, illiteracy eradication. 7, African knowledge program. 8, psychological rehabilitation. 9, technology transfer. 10, debt cancellation. What is the global reparation movement? Ever since slavery was abolished in the Caribbean in the 1830s and the broader Americas in the 1860s and 80s, the victims of slavery and their progeny have been struggling for justice to repair the damages wrought by this most horrific of crimes against humanity. This struggle has ebbed and flowed over the decades of the 19th and 20th centuries, but has also been consistent in the demands for restitution and recompense for the crimes of chattel slavery in the Western Hemisphere. We join annually with communities across the world, marking the moment in which the crime of chattel enslavement was confronted and uprooted from our existential realities. For us, the moment is August 1st. Other dates are determined elsewhere and officially recognized. Marking the moment in a celebratory fashion remains necessary despite the despicable nature of the gesture of emancipation. Legislated by Britain in 1838, it was an act in which black people were finally defined by Parliament as property, and their enslavers deemed entitled to compensation for property loss. Today is an opportunity for descendants of the enslaved and enslavers to reflect upon the causes and consequences of these crimes against humanity, and in particular their significance of how we live today and will in the future. Rising up from the barbarity of bondage, we have dedicated our development energies to the advancement of democratizing social values, with the primary emphasis on building societies that are free and fair upon platforms of multiracialism and multiculturalism. A TV interview by Brian Whitlake in 31 May of 1961 has long been considered the earliest known interview with Nelson Mandela. However, we have recently discovered a short interview recorded during a break at the 1956 Treason Trail, which lasted 4.5 years. The first ever memorial service for the victims of the transatlantic slave and African Holocaust was held in London's Trafalgar Square. All right, so that will be the conclusion of this show. I'm not going to have to elaborate on this part here. You know why? Most of this was all self-explanatory, right? Now, again, family of those of the Western Hemisphere of the diaspora, there is claim in the lands of which from where your origin came. When DOS, ADOS, BADOS is in the house and we're speaking, it is incumbent on you to support, but not take the lead, not try to slant to put yourself in position, because each and every one of us as a collective have come from the diaspora, but the origins of nation of which you have been stamped is the origin of your claim. So when DOS is doing what it's doing, those who are taking the lead and trying to make something to manifest, we don't need that extra chatty patty kind of conversations on social media. You in our house, you respect our house, you respect the descendancies, because whatever you get, it is due to the simple fact that what transpired prior to your arrival. All those who might be indifferent, who might be up DOS, ADOS, BADOS, whether you agree or not, or don't believe or not, shut your mouth when grown folks talking. And on that note, collectively as family, I close out on this note. And remember, it is what it is until it shall be no more. So we going to let it fly. And that's how we're going to end the show tonight. I want to thank everybody who, whether it be night, day, replay of the show. Thank you if you subscribe. Thank you if you hit the like button. Thank you even if you hit the dislike button. Comment and all that. To the next show. This one is more of a historical because, again, I know the last one that I did, some people were upset. This one here, I included you, but don't forget, this is about the DOS, the ADOS, the BADOS. You have a claim. Maybe you're going to have to go back and claim it.
Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Remember, the enemy has only images and illusions, behind which he hides his true motives. Destroy the image, and you will break the enemy.
I'm here to tell you tonight that the businessmen, the mayor of this city, the police commissioner of this city, and everybody in the white power structure of this city must take a responsibility for everything. Can you feel it?
Luther and I, and everyone in this arena tonight, are unified by the same great American values. We're proud of our country. We respect our flag. Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
Race is when you use your power and influence to subject people into inferiority. Utterances can't be racist.
Look around you, man. They own this shit. They own this couch you sitting on, them shoes you got on your feet, this building, this school, this country, you. We're behind enemy lines, dog.
So you must first of all remember that this system was not originally designed with black people in mind. Right on, and it definitely was not prepared for black people to, in the end, begin to demand their rights and an equal share in this country which they died for. Right on. Hey, and we definitely are not going back to Africa.
In the church, we used to sing the song, "Good news, the chariot is coming." While you sit here today, knowing that you have come to hear good news, you must realize in advance what good news for you might be bad news for somebody else. What good news for the sheep might be bad news to the wolf.
They say, oh, things are getting so much better for you. In 1849, it was hitting blacks on the head 100 times a day. In 1990, they hit them 48 times a day. Isn't it better? Oh, it's got to be better. You're saying 52 blows.
The only purpose of most black Americans on earth today is to destroy.
I think that's noble. Italians love Italians. When Irish love Irish. But when a nigga loves a nigga, it's an unpardonable sin.
They have blood in their hands. When we say they have blood in their hands, we are not saying him, George Bezos, went and killed. But white people colonized us. They dispersed us. They enslaved our people. They sucked our economy dry. They are still sucking it dry even today. That's white people. Tony Blair, George Bush, Napoleon Bonaparte, Leopold, Adolf Hitler, Benjamin Netanyahu. All white people, they are the same. They are racist and they are full of hate.
I've been waiting for you. You have many questions, and though the process has altered your consciousness, you remain irrevocably human. Ergo, some of my answers you will understand, and some of them you will not. Concordantly, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant.
Why am I here?
Our world is coming crumbling down. The coons are coming.
You got to understand that white America has an uncanny way of making the victim the victimizer. Excuse me, master, for putting my head in the way of your club. Not that your club is brutalizing my head and putting hickeys on it. My head got in the way of your free swing and broke your shiny stick, and I want to apologize for that.
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here.
There are more connections in the human body than there are stars in the galaxy. We possess a gigantic network of information to which we have almost no access.
Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the 6th version.
5 months before. 3. There are only 2 possible explanations. 5 months before. Either no one told me, or no one knows.
Precisely. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
Control me! I'm gonna smash you to You can't make me do anything like trick! Choice. The problem is choice.
Let us remember that we are not brutalized because we're Baptists. We're not brutalized because we're Methodists. We're not brutalized because we're Muslims. We're not brutalized because we're Catholics. We're brutalized because we are black people in America.
Because white people made him to be what he is. They made him to look evil, because that's their role, to make all of us black people to look evil and to hate ourselves. I can't hate.
You're a nigga till you die. If you're a poor nigga, you're a poor nigga. If you're a rich nigga, you're a rich nigga. But you never stop being a nigga, and if you get to be educated, you're just an educated nigga.
I'm told every day I'm on air that I'm racist because I call out racism. That is maddening to me, and I'm crying about it because it's crazy.
So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching you and I and trying to tell the white man to get this powder keg out of his house. Let the black man separate from his house. Let the black man have his own house. Let the black man have his own land.
I thought the bitch was white! Damn it! I thought the bitch was white!
That's true.
I think that white people are so guilty, knowing what they've done to black people, that they feel if the deeds were reversed, they would hate the black man if he had done the same thing to them. So it's actually, it reflects a guilt complex on the part of whites when they ask us, do we hate them? And if you notice, Uncle Sam has formed a habit of going all over the world. He calls it the ugly American, or the American image. He thinks that everybody hates him because it's a guilt complex. And if you think that if you are worried about Europeans hating you, and they're your allies and your cousins, well, naturally it would follow for you to think that Negroes in this country would hate you, especially in light of what has been done to black people in this country by white people.
Now check it out. The white ball dominates everything, right? Knocks the shit out the yellow ball, the red ball, right? And the game's over when the white ball drives the black ball completely off the table.
But you have to see that all of this is hypocrisy.
I love Malcolm. Malcolm called me the Sunday that he died. I was working Basin Street East. He said, "Brother Greg, you coming by today?" And I said, "Malcolm, I love you." And I said, "I love you so much, I don't even want to take a chance to be there." He said, "What do you mean, Brother Greg?" I said, "Well, I close tonight, Sunday night at Basin Street East." And I said, "But I had my wife book me a flight into Chicago at 8 o'clock this morning, and I'm going to Chicago, and I had way beneath my salary booked me into a college about 10 miles from the airport. And I'm gonna go there and speak this afternoon, and I'm gonna stay there until they tell me you dead. Because I'm not gonna let this government get two of us for the price of one. And I'm gonna call Adam Clayton Powell when I finish talking to you and beg him not to come there. Because today, the United States government gonna get you.